Welcome to another special rock and roll before the Sabbath edition, marching to the mountain and back to my headquarters. And was a bit moody, but I cleaned my room off some temple before the Sabbath begins at midnight tonight. And now I've been about 44, almost 45 minutes on the march before I started filming, because I went to get something on the budget, and I said I'm gonna be on that go, so I don't want to film inside the store. Turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. Gotta begin with that gratitude. Grateful, thankful, my rent's paid, electricity bill's paid. Got some food and got some coffee, got some tea, and got some sweets at home, so that's always good. Got those wafers on special yesterday for the Sabbath. Look at the beautiful flowers there. I just love seeing colorful flowers, and auctioning the hat, the shirt, the underwear, the pants, and the backpack, the socks, the boots for $1 million each. That's 7 million, 7 items. 7 million divided by half, it's 3.5 million for me, 3.5 for my anonymous friend who wasn't my friend because of the money. And saluting the firefighters, bakers, butchers, nurses, doctors, plumbers, electricians, and all those involved in the production, distribution of food. We go to the mountain, my second home, and that's what it is, like that. And I saw somebody kissing, making out, so that gives me a little bit of that good loving. 4 couples I counted, 4. Maybe I'll see some more on the go, but otherwise I'm gonna multiply and see that there's thousands perhaps just like those 4 across that free world. Rock and roll in the free world, somebody still is making that LOVE. Hug like you never hugged before is the main message. And of course, if you're black, you're white, you gotta be 18 plus. I'm gonna card you, Just like when you go in a club, you get carded. When you go buy some alcoholic beverage, you get carded. Cigarettes, you get carded. Here in Canada, we legalized that cannabis back in 2019, and you're gonna get carded if you're black and white. You want to come LOV with me, you're a man, you're a woman, and I get lustful. I'm not frustrated in any way, shape, or form, and that sexuality, I gotta channel it myself, so. But yeah, I'm not looking for anything serious. Friends with benefits only. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. And I give a new deadline because I missed deadlines, and by October 31st, Halloween at midnight, just before November 1st, a new deadline to propose again for the 3rd time. And flag spotted, both on my right side. Flag, Canadian flag there, and Canadian flag there. See, that's the Canadian flag right there. So when I spot the flag, on my marches, what I do, I get that rock and roll, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, and that's the flag, and I show mine on. I always carry that Canada flag on me. It's always tatted up, so that's how I gotta get that drill, 24/7 for the 10, the 50, and the 6, the 10, the 50, and the 3. Add those up, do that mathematics. That's 63 and perpetually for the North American Collective. Although here we are, the true North, strong and free, and the land of the free and the home of the brave. Home of the brave, land of the free, home of the brave. Here, Canada, we're true North, strong and free. We gotta add some more ingredients to that, Because we both gotta be brave, free, and strong. Strong, free, and brave is not enough for me. Gotta add some of that LOVE, some of that just. And I'm stressed, financially stressed, My only stress now is financial, economic, money-wise, but I live a very simple, rainbow, austere lifestyle, and I get my wafers on special. I'm happy, content, joyous. I go on my marches, I'm happy. I see people hugging, kissing, holding hands. I'm happy, joyous, and I see the youth and the elderly joyous, smiling, and I'm happy, content, Always open for business. Pleasure, pledge your allegiance, support the dream. My dream is fundamentally a call for a public-private partnership across the North American Collective, always for the truckers, the bakers, the butchers, the doctors, the firefighters, and all those who did a little bit of embellishment here at the cities, in the public, to have a little bit of that good embellishment for the cities are super important, Public embellishments, such as those public embellishments, who have made the arrangements, of course, across the North American Collective for us to have, of course, here, this beauty. And you got both the public and the private, and the public and the private are something which consequently they gotta go work together, and that is just something which, of course, we have to do on the consequential matters of me being in the public space now, that I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations which are not the same as if I would have stayed home, If I would have stayed home, they would have not been the same. I would have had less obligations, duties, and obligations than now that I'm outside, Now that I stepped outside, I have added responsibilities, duties, and obligations that I wouldn't have had. Look at these beautiful flowers. Aren't you? It's just so gorgeous there. These are nice. I don't know what they're called, but they're super nice. I love seeing flowers there, and on the side when I go, it's something when I gotta get a little bit of that loving kindness and always admire flowers. See on that side also. I think I'm gonna cross to that side, see where they go there. Forget the name, kind of Latin name pops out. Those ones there, see? Those ones, those are pretty cute. I love those type of flowers like that. They always give me a little bit of that good joy to see them there. But you know, I have a special inclination towards those yellow flowers. Beautiful red, my favorite color truck right here. RED, my favorite color. I'm wearing the hat, the backpack, and my underwear. And of course the fourth one is this phone that I'm holding. The cover is of course red, like my favorite color. That's what I said, and that's what we gotta get doing with that drill, and always gotta give it to the mountain and back. And you know, I go often there because that's my kind of ritual routine. Is I have these kind of routines and rituals with my N.A.C.W.P condition, neurological mental divergent condition, not an illness at all. And gonna discuss a little bit about it, gonna be grateful, and of course gonna discuss all the things that are pertinent to my dream, the dancing goddess in the dragon kingdom, which is fundamentally a call for a public private partnership across the collective North American civilizational complex. And it seems that we gotta cross the bridge on the other side. So this march is for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, the electricians, the firefighters, the workers, fellow Aspies, and all the N.A.C.W.P. Let's get that PPP together, the North American Collective Workers' Party, the Democratic Republican Party, the Universal Revolutionary Centrist Party, for the workers, for rehabilitation, for joy, and for insurance of that FREDOM. And we gotta build bridges, just like because I am different and because of my neurodivergence. This difference, of course, being that I'm part of this tiny small community of population with Asperger's, who have Asperger's, HFA. We always gotta build bridges. Look at that beautiful sun. We always gotta build bridges. Those bridges are smaller, medium size, big size. 4 sizes usually. Small bridges, medium sized bridges, large bridges, extra large bridges. They gotta be built. Saluting the train conductors. Look at those choo-choo trains, that railway here going east-west. We're going north a bit, and then we're gonna go out east, and we're gonna come back west with a beautiful sun who now rises and now shines. And gonna give some salutations to the public workers here who are gonna make a little bit of that work, arbeit, on this bridge. And for the workers of the past, you know, in the public, of course, who build bridges just like this. In the past, of course, who build bridges just like this. So many bridges have been built across our coming of the empire, Democratic Republican Empire of the 63 in the past. And gotta salute a little bit of that old school with a new school. And you know, I really gotta go for the past a few seconds, so I'm just gonna turn and go in the wilderness a bit to just pee. And I took some prunes the other day here. Now they're all gone. But somebody had planted these when they're in the 70s, supposedly 77, when they were doing the power lines, when they were doing the power lines transmission. Well, they're laying the power lines transmissions. They were, so the story goes, that they planted fruit trees, pear trees, and plums, and yellow plums, and plums, regular plums, and those ones. So here I'm just gonna, you're not gonna see, but now here, because here we're by the train tracks, and here's where we're gonna look left and right, because I really have to go. I can't hold it, otherwise I'm gonna pee all over me. Oh yeah, much needed. I couldn't hold it. If I would have stayed 4 more minutes maximum, then I would have leaked. And I know that the closest place for me to have peed, this would have been a few football fields, you know, far away, 44 football fields away. So I said, hey, I know I had the opportunity, you know, just like when you go, like the truckers go, they gotta either stop or somewhere, or they know their stops if they know their routes and they have to go, or of course you can carry that bottle, I guess, and in a truck, okay? Something like that. If so it is, it's so cool. So here we are marching for my allies and armies, pledge your allegiance, and as an N.A.C.W.P, part of this tiny small community of less than 1%, although I'm part of the half who are not officially diagnosed, although myself I've been unofficially by several individual citizens who have experience in the healthcare system, and I've worked with people with autism and Aspies. I've been diagnosed since about 9 years ago, but for many years I've always refused to accept it, that I have this neurodivergent difference of Asperger's, and until about 3.5 years ago during COVID so it makes sense, and yes, I have these characteristic traits. I don't use the word symptoms, and of course due to these characteristic traits and symptoms, turn your heads left and right when you cross the street, we have these brain differences and at the microscopic level, and thus we see the world differently, that's what it is, and that's what we gotta get doing with that. So it's something which we gotta get doing like that to get it inside. And look at those beautiful flowers there. I just love the combination of multicolored flowers. I love red and yellow, but just love the combination, of course, where we are now, to get it on the do like that, to get it on the left and the right. That's something we have, of course, to get it on the do, to get it now, of course, in the simulacrum. We are now involved in the competences of our interdynamics, that we have to build bridges, because we know Asperger's, we are not bad, we're not evil, we're not negative, we're not malicious. Those are categorizations which an N.A.C.W.P has to refuse. So we're not a lot in the world, there's not a lot of Aspies, people with Asperger's. There's about less than 1%. So officially the population who has an official diagnosis is about 0.44%. So the total population in reality is about double. But even double is not even 1%, even double, right? So even if the population all would be diagnosed, well, it's about half of the people who are diagnosed. Only turn your heads left and right before you cross the street, because you never know. Sometimes they might, of course, come fast and might press the accelerator instead of the brake. So I always have to double check, and you always have to double check yourself. That's what I gotta get doing like that, and that's something where we have to get doing like that with that. So that is just something which we have, of course, in mind, So this difference makes us that we are predisposed to special interests, for example, or that we see the world differently sometimes. And again, not all Aspies are, of course, good, at mathematics. Not all Aspies are good at mathematics, although we are usually beautiful. Yellow is my favorite color. That just quadrupled my smile. I got a salute when I see yellow flowers like that, and they have it there. I just love yellow flowers in the garden. It's so nice. Those ones also are nice, but yellow is nice. That one also very nice garden there. See how it's laid out with the beautiful, vivid, fluorescent colors. I just love it, So that is just something where we are now, in the individual state of being, where we are protruding, to get on the go, and it's something where we are involved with now, to getting on that situational awareness, to get it on the go, and it's something where we have to be doing, right? Something where we have, of course, to be involved in all the situational complexes, and we have to build the bridges. That's a beautiful tree there. Look, it makes me think of acacia, ACACIA, acacia trees. So that is just something that we have, of course, to do. So yeah, it makes me think of acacia tree. So that's a general, of course, discussion or introduction about Asperger's, and just to add about 5 minutes, I guess, it's important, relevant to fully understand, and so that we build these bridges, the small bridges and medium-sized bridges and large bridges and extra large bridges. Those 4 bridges have to be built. That's another beautiful flower pot there. So whatever we build those bridges, we have to build them in consequence, of course, more or less for some other people with some other people, and that's something which we have to do, of course, in the consequences where we are now, to do it now, you know. So that is something which we have to do now, and that's something where we gotta do there in the left and the right, and the left and the right with that, and that's something we'll have, of course, to minister, of course, in all the situational aspects where we are now. So that is something where we gotta be doing, you know, in the transversal appellation of the things where we are now, that we have to build those bridges, you know, and those bridges that we have to be built, of course, is something that we have, of course, as a interactive, interchangeable, you know, as an interchangeable, you know, operative, is that those bridges can sometimes be built from both sides. They have to be built from both sides, but they sometimes require bigger sizes, for example, small, medium, large, or extra large, right? Depending on, again, it depends on the situation, because someday an individual citizen, sovereign citizen might order a small coffee or fries, a medium coffee or fries, a large coffee or fries, an extra large coffee or fry, right? So that is basically the truth of the different sizes that somebody might order, the different sizes that somebody might order. So depending on the sizes and the variations thereof, it could be varying to a different degree by different days of the week, right? Somebody might order more extra large Mondays, and then Fridays goes with the smaller and diminishes during the week, you know. So there's variation. So thus, we Aspies, we're part of this tiny small community. It's not an illness, it's not a disease. I'm not a disease, and people with Asperger's, it's not a disease. We are different. We see the world differently, you know. And because of these mutations of the brain, you know. So because of these mutations of the brain, at the microscopic level, we see the world differently, in a different manner. So, and again, not all Aspies are computer geniuses, by the way, and good at computer science, eh? Not all Aspies are good at that. Not all Aspies are good at that. 20%, 20%, 20%, 20% are about good at that. That's 1/5. That's 1/5, about 1/5, right? That's what it is, about 1/5 of it. So that means, but that's still higher than the average percentage, right? So that is still 1 out of 5 that are very good at computers and computer science of Asperger's. To keep in mind that the population is small, right? Because the total Aspie population stands at around less than 1%. Again, only those who have an official diagnostic are 0.44% only, circa, about estimations. So that means that double, if the number is at 50%, you got to double it mathematically. That means that it's about 0.88% of the total population. So in other words, it's a small, tiny fraction of the population. Small, tiny fraction of the population. And we have these weird, awkward, strange, bizarre, sometimes the way we interact, our social communications, and we have these sort of ritualized routines. We can have, of course, stimming. We could have, of course, stimming or not. And if we have stimming, then we have stimming, or we could have, of course, repetitions of words, phrases. We can have repetition of words, phrases, and the dynamics, for example, that we might repeat things twice, 3 times, or of course we might repeat a kalele what somebody says out loud, what somebody says out loud. That would be something which is protrudent, you know. That is something which can happen as a manifestation of Aspiness manifestation. So this Aspie manifestation can concomitantly be more intense, more different, more divergent, more laissez-faire, depending, of course, on the situation where we are and in the context of the discussion, because it varies, eh? Because if you and I discuss my special interest, rock and roll, sports and fitness, dancing is my favorite sport, or geopolitics, you know, then that is, of course, my special interest, geopolitics. But of course, Aspies, the special interests, they differ from one Aspie to another. An Aspie might have a special interest as computer science. And again, generally Aspies, including myself, at certain things in mathematics, such as percentages, calculations, fractions, I am pretty good, and I do it automatically sometimes. Like the other day, I was calculating the half, whatever the half was. So I was calculating, of course, the half of the number. So basically, I was calculating half of the number, and that number, of course, was exactly in precise the manner that was be, the manner that would be. So basically, of course, the manner that would be, of course, that is something what we have, of course, to do, and we, of course, involved in all the situational aspects where we have, of course, to be now, you know. So all of the levels of interactions, for example, an aspect like myself, I might focus weirdly enough on these numbers here, these details. 2013, inspected 2023, and these numbers here, see? I know there's a classification, quantification, they serve a purpose. So this is an aspect trait, one-on-one, you know? This is an aspect trait, one-on-one. This is an aspect trait, one-on-one. It's an aspect trait, one-on-one. So that is the aspiness, you know. This aspiness can be problematic for some, more for some than others. And of course, it can be that these problems can arise in communication, right? There could be misunderstandings. You know, this could be misunderstandings because some aspects, including myself, sometimes to some questions or some conversations, we can be, of course, direct and straightforward. So that might cause a certain offense, you know, which is unwilling. We don't necessarily mean to offend, but we might just respond in such a way that and I would love to see this painted here, you know. This requires some paint, really. This would be so nice painted, some blue, white, red, green, some rainbow. This would be automatically, would be so much joy for me and for thousands of residents who live in this high resident neighborly. I'm just gonna go to the side because there's somebody on the bike there and somebody on the path, so just gotta go on the side there for the left and for the right, and for their safety, for me to, that's why I approached the wall. I decided to take a few steps and to approach the wall, so because I got the backpack, so because I'm in the public, so I have added responsibilities, duties and obligations, you know. I have added responsibilities, duties and obligations, which I don't have under the normal circumstances of situation and of life. I don't have, right? But I'm in the public, so I have those added responsibilities and duties and obligations, which I don't have under the normal circumstances. I don't have under the normal circumstances that I would have had, you know. That is just, of course, the difference where we are, of course, in the interactions and in the facultations of applying the dynamics of social, applying the rules, the rules and norms of being in the public. But sometimes, aspies, we have difficulty with that, you know. We have difficulty with that. Of course, we have difficulty with that. Beautiful sunset. We have difficulty with that, you know. We have difficulty. So that difficulty, of course, is implicit in all, of course, the characteristics where we are, of course, now to be prudently involved in all the manners where we are in the public, and to build those bridges, small, just like you order coffee or fries, you order a small, medium, large or extra large. Within those 4 categories of sizes, I guess you can have subcategories, turn your heads left and right before you cross the street. But generally, those are the 4 main categories of sizes. So with different individuals, different bridges have to be built of different sizes, right? Of different sizes. So there's a variation in the size, right? There's a variation. It could be small, medium, large, extra large. But generally, those are the sizes. So we have these characteristics, and these characteristics, of course, are pertinent. They're pertinent, of course, to all, of course, the civilizational complex where we are, of course, involved in, and of course, all the situation where we are, the dynamics, of course, where we are now involved, you know. Where we are now involved. Where we are now involved. Where we are now involved in being in the streets. In the public, right? So I got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations. I got added responsibilities, duties, and obligations, right? And that's about it. That's about it. How I rock and roll. That's why, as we encounter some problems, and I have for many, many years, I refused it. I didn't want to accept, I'm different, and that is just the characteristics where we are now. To operate, of course, in the mode where we are transposing, of course, to be, and to be characteristics, of course, of all the dynamics of the plurality of the diverse North American civilizational complex, because Canadians, brothers and sisters in the USA and Mexico, we constitute a collective North American civilizational complex, which is not totally distinct, but is divorced from Western civilization. As a philosopher, of course, myself, being that I am a philosopher, always constituting, of course, the North American integration aspect of the 63. Because I'm not just an artist, a mystic. I believe in reincarnations, of course. And sometimes I was born a man, a woman, a woman, a man, a man, a woman, a woman, a man, man, a woman, a woman, a man, man, a woman, a woman, a man. And I served in the United States Armed Forces, different wars. Two different wars, the same United States Armed Forces. The wars were 156 years apart. And of course, sometimes I was born a woman, a man. Once I was the Pythia, the Oracle, Delphi, priestess, Pythium, as I'm the priestess, of course, of the empire today. Hana. Got trillions of kisses, of course, to have, to be the trillions of kisses to be on the go now, and of course to lay the foundations of the empire, or the 63 with trillions of kisses. And of course, it's always God bless. God has blessed the empire, and always that is something which, of course, we have to be prudent about in all, of course, the projections where we are now, to be simultaneously active in the sphere, of course, that we have, of course, these manifestations, of course, and these manifestations, of course, are, of course, the propositions, of course, where we are now, to be, of course, on the go. Look at that beautiful sunset. Beautiful sunset. That is a beautiful sunset. It's not even sunset yet, but of course we have, of course, to analyze and, of course, be concomitant where we are in this hot Isle of Montreal. What a beautiful sky. Sometimes you gotta look, because I say I will to build a goddess, GODDSS temple, but by the look of the goddess got those pyramids, the tombs and temples, and where I will to be rotated every 11 years. The tombs and temples where I will to be rotated every 11 years. Tombs and temple where I will to be rotated every 11 years, That is, of course, the rotation where we got, and that is, of course, where we are, of course, with the situational complex, where we are involved, of course, to be looking at that sunset and that sunrise. That is always something where we have, of course, to gaze while crossing the street safely. 4 seconds I still had leftovers, I guess, and those leftovers is something what I gotta see at that. Isn't that just amazing, divine, holy? Look at that sun. Look at that heaven. Queen of heavens, beautiful stars by the trillions, construction workers who build buildings like this under the sun and the stars. And wow, I always admire, because I will to build a 4, and we're gonna get to the 4 that I will to build, but I gotta go peekaboo at these little yellows. Oh yeah. Yeah, they have a scent. I just love it. Cute little garden and cute heaven, and that made my way to the mountain even more pleasant as we're going now. So now on this, at the corner where we're gonna get there, between this street and the other street, is kind of where my old neighborhood begins, This kind of separates, and it's nothing that I will to go back to. I have lived in a small underground basement, but that was a long time ago. Just like it was years and years ago that I've been first diagnosed and told that I have Asperger's, but I didn't want to accept it, because there still is a bit of a stigma, but less and less, and I'm gonna do a circle pass by those flowers, because I gotta get that loving garden. But finally, about 3.5 years ago, I have accepted it. I said, yeah, I'm an N.A.C.W.P, so I have to work on these characteristics. I gotta give a shout out to my anonymous friend. Thank you for gifting me 2 books on autism, and one book specifically was rented 4 times specifically just on Asperger's from the library was 4 times was loaned, and this is a gorgeous, looks like that ice cream, Napolitan ice cream. Napolitan, this makes me think of that ice cream there. Oh, there you go, some more. It's beautiful. So, Appreciating Asperger's Syndrome is the book that I'm making a reference to, which also gotta give a thank you again to my anonymous friend and for that gift. And this book made me realize and open my eyes vis-a-vis my characteristics, my traits, the divergence, the differences, the variations in my brain, and how we see the world, how we process information differently, how we have these difficulties in making and maintaining long-term relationship, friends, and isolation and bullying and self-harm and depression and suicidal, and all the problems with long-term employment, and all the communication problems and the struggles that we might encounter because of this difference of the brain. And it's not conclusive. The cause of Asperger's, it's either biological, hereditary, genetic, or is hereditary, biological, hereditary, or is environmental. Gotta salute the firefighters. When you hear firefighters and you hear the sirens, ambulance and police ambulance, you gotta do the 180, 180 to the left, 180 to the right, and that's 360 degrees that you do, and slow down your car, and sing some cadence for them to get back home safe, make some good loving. And that's of course something which we have to do. All the situational awareness, something where we got to be on that prudent side, and that's where we're gonna be now. We're gonna just make sure that we have certain things which we gotta work on together, and of course all the working out together of those things are sometimes which simultaneously gonna make us better at building those bridges, because we have to build the bridges, whether on the left, on the right, and of course something when you're on the left, on the right, you have to build those bridges concomitantly in all the epochs that it might take. The endurance of the bridge is not necessarily an endurance, but it's of course the size of the bridge. So that size may vary. The size may vary. So of course the size might vary. So basically the variation or the size there, that is the size. Whoop. That is the different sizes that gotta be built. I'm gonna check these one out. Let me see. Oh, these are nice also. Wow, that is nice. That is nice, really nice. It's really beautiful. So whoever put the work here, the brains and the muscle, I really appreciate it. It kind of sticks out a bit, and has a little bit on that size, and you can see the beautification. How important is our empire will have mass beautification projects, such as mass beautification projects just like this. It's just beautiful, and something which we have, of course, to be in a situation. So it's just how we are, of course, and nice, super nice. Gonna go now. And speaking of the devil before, firefighters, LOV. When you see the siren, see the lights, I guess they're getting into into their hut now, into the barracks. Getting into the barracks. Getting into the barracks on that. And I always imagine, I never did it myself, of course, but how important it is, it's something which we take for granted, and people are working out there on the go, and something which we have, of course, on the complexities, of course, of the machinations of all the situational aspects where we are now. But, that is something which we gotta be on the side, to be mindful about and be always grateful as well, Gratitude, I think, is something, because we got what I call the privilege of civilization, Civilization, all this, buildings, firefighters, drinking water, potable, the electricity, even myself, because I'm doing the video, I'm doing this video, of course, with clean, zero pollution energy, and my friend there, please, you're driving, that wasn't safe, If a child would have came, you should have done stop there. It's a one way, but that wasn't a proper stop, because a child could have come with that bike. See, a child could have been on that bike there, and you cross really fast. Just do a proper stop. So you do a proper stop, count 3 seconds, and this is, you know, because you got the stop there and the car went really fast, eh? Because you got the stop there. See, arrêt, that's a stop. That's a stop sign here in French, and you can know by the white and the red, you know. So, here, I was a bit, I don't know, maybe people are in a rush, but still, you know, the vehicles can be replaced, whatever, it's just vehicles, you know. I drive these boots and take public transit. I had some information that I owned cars before, but you know, my memory is blackout. I have retrograde amnesia symptoms. Well, it's because I remember I have a very, very, very good memory of the past 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years. 11 years and 6 months. 11 years and 6 months. And of course 11 years and 6 months. And before February 2014, before that time, kind of around that time, February 2014, before February 2014, I have trouble remembering. I used to live a few kilometers that way. I'm going to show you my whole neighborhood. Kind of, there it is, part of it, I guess. Here it is, part of it. So this side of the street is where my old neighborhood begins, and this is where my new neighborhood is. So if I go on the other side of the street and there, that's kind of where my old neighborhood kind of begins there, and at the corner there, you're gonna see it. But I guess even counting from here, I guess, from Cavendish that way, I guess from the corner of Cavendish south, and then northeast from Cavendish here, you're gonna see Cavendish. I just have problems remembering my life prior to about February 2014, before that. But that's a long time ago. That's a long time ago if you think about it. 11 years and 7 months now, 6 months. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September. So it's gonna go on 7 months, so it's more than 11 and a half years ago. More than 11 and a half years ago. More than 11 and a half years ago. That's a long time. Already long time. 11 years and 6 months. 2014, February 2014. It's 2014, February, yeah. I thought I moved in 2016 to a better place, and it ended up as 2015. And I know I graduated high school here in Canada in 2003, so that's 22 years ago. But I just can't remember my life prior to that. I don't know if I was a junkie. Was I a junkie? Was I an alcoholic? Did I drink my aspiness away? Because I went to college, but I dropped out of college. I had some credits, so I dropped out of college. But Aspies, of course, we have this problem, that we drop out of high school, of course, and of college with that, and that is something which we have, of course, to be, and that it is what it is with that, and that is the rock and roll, you know. Yeah, high problematic. Aspies drop out of high school and post-secondary education, aka higher education, way more than you, the 99%ers, the vast majority of the population of neurotypicals. It's a problem for Aspies because we're different, you know, so we often face rejection, isolation, bullying, self-harm, and I was depressed, suicidal. Anyways, I don't know, sometimes alcoholic, lose memory. If I was drinking for, 4 years, let's say, I was drinking my life away, you know, I was drinking my life away. So if I was drinking, maybe then, I don't know, maybe, I don't know, maybe, eh? Maybe. Maybe. So of course, if I was drinking myself, if I was an alcoholic, maybe that's why it's memory loss. You know, memory loss. Maybe that's why. Or hard drugs sometimes. Hard drugs, if I was a junkie, if I was doing hard drugs. I don't do drugs, and I even have it's legal cannabis. Cannabis is legal here since 2019. But of course, I don't do it myself, you know. I don't do it myself. I don't do drugs, you know. I don't do drugs. Actually, I smoked It was a long time ago now. I still have leftovers from about 3.5 years ago that I bought during COVID. I still have. I don't even know if it's still good because it's legalized cannabis coast to coast, federally, coast to coast, ocean to ocean in Canada, in all the 13. And we got, I guess, some of the greatest legal cannabis, and of course since 2019. So it's been a while since it's legalized. Not the hard drugs are not legal, but cannabis and hashish, they're legal now. Hashish, cannabis are legal. But I guess with my Asperger's, with my Asperger's, I don't need to do drugs. I'm already, of course, on the druggy side, and already all those drugs which I have is neurodivergent drugs. Have been naturally occurrence, you know. It's a natural occurrence, I guess. Natural occurrence for me, but that is just something with, of course, I gotta be seeing, gotta be doing, of course, because it's just who I am. As an Aspie, different already. I guess I'm already in it. High as it is, enough. But on occasion when I can afford, I can drink a glass of wine, especially during the Sabbath. I wouldn't mind affording every Friday, Saturday a bottle of wine for me. 2 bottles for the weekend, split 50-50, half of each, white and red for my anonymous friend, you know, my anonymous friend, and I'll be splitting on that half, and that was just something which we have to do, you know, and that'll be that good. But yeah, I have my vices, wafers, and I lust for if you're 18 plus, you know. 18 plus, and then we can black and white rainbow dance, gridiron, hut, style, good dragon loving, you know. But back to Asperger's to finalize, and just to know that sometimes memory comes back, you know. I just remember I was attacked viciously. I survived a vicious surprise attack in the metro. I was hit in the head and a few times. Surprise attack, cowardly, vicious surprise attack. I fell on the floor of the metro. I hit my head on the concrete, and I had a dislocated right arm, right shoulder. I was bloodied up, and I went to the Jewish General Hospital. So I went to the Jewish General Hospital, you know. I went to the Jewish General Hospital. That's the name of the hospital here. I went to the Jewish General Hospital, and they cracked back my arm, you know. So they had cracked back my arm, and of course I was put on some medications. So basically I was put on some meds, was made up, and I don't know, maybe that another trauma when I have these flashes of trauma, you know, of unspeakable things that about me. And geopolitically, because geopolitics is my special interest, my memory my personal memory kind of coincides with the rise of what still exists, known of course as the Islamic State terrorist group, the terror group known as ISIL, by Abu Bakr, who had declared themselves a caliphate unrecognized across Syria and Iraq. And of course, I'd done some work with the CSIS, Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and RCMP, because I found some newspaper here which was freely distributed in Montreal. A newspaper, free community newspaper, which had 4 pages of that article. This was circa 2016, and it was calling for citizens to join and pledge allegiance to the Islamic State terror group and their caliphate, and to attack us here. So I said, wow, look at this. This is a national security matter right here. It's an open, freely distributed. It was no cost. It was a community in Citoyen, a few kilometers that way, at the place there, at the library, because I used to go often. I spent many years depressed and suicidal, but still I was one foot kind of in the streets, and the other foot I was kind of one foot in the streets, and the other foot was kind of in the libraries. I guess if I retrieve all the library books which I've rented from summer 2014 until summer 2019, then I'm probably gonna see that. See, this is an Aspie trait. Now, of course, I'm analyzing, trying to see what those numbers and digits are all about there. If they have a certain sense, a certain classification, or whatever that those little numbers are there. See, there's little numbers and inscriptions. They look a bit alien-esque. I guess you could put it in an alien movie. And you know, it's in a parallel life now with my Aspie super scientist. In a parallel life I live myself. I'm also neurodivergent, also have Asperger's, but then we are in the year of darkness, November 10th, 2029, and I created supercomputers, satellites, constellations, satellites linked with, of course, super communication sats, and of course with supercomputers down below and satellites and antennas, and I linked all that kind of United States NATO complex, a super total integrated SSD grid, security, service and defense, integrated NATO plateau grid. Back in that parallel life, of course, it is the year of darkness. The year of darkness, it is, of course, 2029, November 10, 2029. The year of darkness, 2029. November 10, 2029. The year of darkness, and you know, yeah, my ASPE side aside, I just gonna go back to what I do remember most, but keep in mind that that's February 2014, where I used to live in that moldy underground place. It was like a small prison cell. I guess I served my time, and small, tiny, moldy. I didn't even have a bathtub. A small bathroom, like a prison cell, and the kitchen was not. It was in my room. I didn't even have a kitchen. I'm very grateful for where I live now. It's way better. And I moved from there. If I would have stayed there, I would have probably been dead. You know, out of the mold. Reading books. You know, I remember I was renting books. That's what I remember for about since February 2014 till I moved 2015. I was in moldy place and I was renting books. I was going at the library. I was like kind of walking the streets of Montreal solo, you know, and going to rent books. And I made the friend along the way, and friends with benefits from now on, or pledge your allegiance to our family. And it was a small underground basement, a small underground room, and that was just so small, so tiny. And of course I did it on that go, and that is of course just the appellation where we are now, of course, to be integrated in all the domain where we are now, to get it, of course, to get that life affirming valuation, of course, of all the civilizational complex which we are now, to live, and of course to be concomitant where we are now today, the 12th of September, day after September 11th. And according to my journals, in September 11th I was finishing high school. I was actually in my physics class, and from what I know, geopolitics was also always part of my field of interest, special interest, because I have a written document from high school when I wanted to supposedly attend Kingston Military College. So this geopolitics was always part of me. So I wanted to attend Kingston Military College. And of course that attending never occurred. I took a trajectory, I guess. And I don't know how many years I lived in that small underground basement. Probably a few years. And just my life prior to February 2014, you know, remains a mystery. And I don't have a birth certificate, so I say, where was I born? Was I born here in Montreal? Was I born in the city of the pyramids near Cairo? I know I want to be buried here atop Mount Royal, and then every 11 years send me to the city of the pyramids in Cairo, Egypt, and 11 years send me, and of course, Hampton, New Jersey, and then back here rotate me, and maybe I was born in Lugoj, Transylvania. Maybe I was born in Haifa, or maybe in Washington, D.C., in Pentagon. In the basements of the Pentagon, down there, in the basements of the Pentagon. Date of birth. Says November 6th, and I have documents from high school here and stuff like that, you know, from the 90s, and then from early 2000s, and then supposedly I own some cars, and I moved there with nothing. Where I live now, I had nothing. I have really nothing. Where I moved there, where I live now, I really had nothing there. You know? I had nothing really where I live now. It's just I had nothing. Just I guess what I moved there with, a backpack or whatever I had, because I got to thank my anonymous friend who, besides buying secondhand products, secondhand clothes like what I'm wearing, and the t-shirt was gifted by yours truly from my anonymous friend, and of course that was the gift, and the shorts that I got are secondhand, a hat, the backpack was a donation from a donation box. So of course I don't know, I buy a lot. Most of my things are secondhand, except for the socks, which I bought on special, and those were the Dynamics Those were the dynamics. Bought on special. The big pack, you know, the 20 packs there with $10, 50 cents each. That's what I'm making the reference with. But that's not what I'm wearing now. I'm wearing the socks that my anonymous friend gifted me. So I'm still financially stressed. I had many jobs, many jobs, many employments. I had so many, actually during COVID even. But the problem, okay, so we Aspies, being that we're different, we see the world differently, we have troubles in social interactions, and sometimes it's difficult, because of our ritual-like routines. We have these special interests, and most of our days are spent whether studying, learning, doing, and being engaged in those special interests with intensity, super focus, super concentration, super dedication. So we're super focused, super intense, super dedicated, right? Super focused. We can be very, but these are not obsessive, because the word obsessive is often used, but it's an obsession is for you, the 99% of the population, the neurotypicals, right? Because for us, it's kind of a natural kind of situation for us, an engagement, and it provides lots of joy, and even Aspies can excel in those special areas of interest. As me, when I discuss my theories that I formulated in geopolitics over the past 7, 8, 9, 10, I guess 11 years, are related to the North American NATO Collectif and NATO. Sometimes they can be academic, more complex in their dimensions, and of course I do a general aperçu matter of every time that I go marching to the mountain. Look at this beautiful garden. So that is where we gotta situate ourselves. That Asperger's, just to finalize on Aspiness, it's not bad. It's not evil. It's not negative. It's not a disease. We have to draw the line. And that's where we draw the line. When we have to state that it's not negative, not bad, and it's not a disease. So it's not negative, it's not bad, it's not a disease, and it's not malicious, and it's not an illness. You have to draw the line, though. So it's not evil. Aspie traits, characteristics, yes, sometimes we can be direct and straightforward, but they're not evil, they're not bad. We can just be straightforward and direct, and that's just, of course, the matter how we see the world sometimes in a different way, and we're kind of sort of sometimes, not always, but we're kind of like a bit extraterrestrials, but we're not evil, bad, or negative. And I don't have antagonistic negative feelings towards the neurotypical population, although, because the workspaces are made for majority of you, the population, the neurotypical workspaces, the work environment is, there's less and less, more and more inclusiveness of people with Asperger's and autistics, but nonetheless, it's made specially most foremost for neurotypicals, right? It's not necessarily for Aspies who view the world differently, and when asked a question or whatever, sometimes we're direct and straightforward, and that can seem odd and bizarre, and not because we mean to be evil, bad, or trigger, or be negative, or malicious intent, attribution of those intentions and have to be relegated, because it's not what it is. And we have compassion, we have empathy, but we show it not necessarily by verbal inclination, but we might necessarily not show it by verbal inclination, but we might, of course, show it by action. So instead of, for example, I give you a concrete example. So this is a discussion. Sometimes somebody might ask you or me, how are you? So an Aspie, of course, might say, of course, exactly how we feel. We will respond exactly to how we are. If I'm financially stressed, I will say it. If I'm not feeling that good, I will say, I'm not so good, or X, Y, Z. I would just say whatever the case may be, of course, in the inclination. So I would, of course. I wonder what that RM and AA is for. See, this is an Aspie characteristic here. This is Aspiness, Aspie traits 101. So we might focus on certain details like that, like what I know that's probably a classification, letters that symbolize a word. RM, AA, something about metro, R for restricted, A for maybe autistic, Asperger's, no. I'm not sure, but there's definitely some purpose to these letters and the trait. So that might mean, of course, the classification where we are now, of course, that that trait, that characteristics is of course formulated integrally where we are now. That is just a direct exercise in in aspiness right there on this live and direct march, you know. Yeah, we can be weird like that, awkward, and sometimes mathematics, we might calculate, for example, the perimeter. We try, because it's an estimation, because I'm not with a meter and I'm not with the instruments of measurements, right? Don't have the instruments of measurements when I march now, but you know, the perimeter, for example, of these, some of them look square, these look more square, these look more rectangular, see, a bit. So we'll try to calculate, but the area is by multiplication though. So to have the perimeter, you add all the four sides. If there's 4, you add 4 sides. Could be more sides, but or it could be, in this case it's 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. You add them, and then that gives you the perimeter. For example, if it's 6, 4, 6, 4, because if it's a rectangle, both have the same, right? Rectangular, that's 6 plus 4, that's 10, and 10 double is 20. So that would be 20 inches perimeter. Or of course, if it's a square, it's 4 times 4, it's 16, but that's square inches, right? Square inches. It's not meters in the case, and these ones are smaller. So this could be an ASPE thing, you know. This is when we're involved in doing a little bit of arithmetic mathematics, and especially me when it comes to fractions and percentages. For example, percentage calculation and the price increasing, for example, it comes all the way. So sometimes it just pops in my brain, you know, the answers. It's not necessarily that I calculate it, and the answer just, not to all, of course, mathematical questions, but to a lot of them. The answer would just pop in my brain somehow. Sometimes I don't even know how it's got, and then I double check, and that's the answer by doing the calculations. For example, I give you an example. So if of course it was if it's $1, of course, if it's something what you gotta gotta get it on that go, you know. So it's something what you gotta get doing with that, and that's so we gotta get on that go, you know, for the left and the right, you know. So if, for example, I give you the percentage increase, for example, if something goes up from $1 to $1.44, right, that's 44%, right? That's 44%. So Asperger's is not negative, it's not bad, it's not evil, it's not malicious. It is a neurological mental divergent condition. Sometimes it can be perceived, you know, so sometimes it can be perceived. The perception of Asperger's, people with Asperger's, can be labeled as negative, as malicious, you know, as these negative, malicious. It can be, but it's not. And I'm personally somebody who doesn't like violence. You know, I just do not like violence at all. I don't like it. I like sports, I like fitness, I like dancing, but violence, I just don't like it. I just do not like it. I lived it, I have my scars and whatever the case may be, but that is just, of course, the characteristics, and that is just something what we have, of course, to be. So I don't like violence, but I am hypervigilant. So I live a very hypervigilant life. Hey, look at those beautiful lights. I am hypervigilant. I guess maybe because I survived that vicious surprise attack once I was hit in the head and hit my head and had a dislocated right arm and was bloodied up. And of course, ever since then, that is, of course, the hypervigilance by which I live with. Another trauma, I guess. So that is just my hypervigilance, and this hypervigilance is something which I guess sometimes can be the hypervigilance can be, of course, a good thing, you know, a good thing. It's not necessarily a negative thing. This hypervigilance is not necessarily a negative thing, you know. It's not necessarily a negative thing. There's not necessarily a negative thing. is not necessarily a negative thing. Attribution, of course, of those constituencies where we are now, of course, in all the domain where we live, So that is just the appellation of where we are now evolved to be in all the situational complexes where we did endeavor to live as neurodivergence with you, the 99%ers, the neurotypical. So we have to build those bridges. So back to violence again. I don't like it. I am hyper vigilant, and that's why I always say we gotta channel the aggression, We gotta channel it. That's why I got sports, fitness, and I am not sexually frustrated. If I would be, I would discuss it. But I'm not necessarily looking. It's just, if you want, you're black, you're white, you're a man or woman, just don't waste my time. And what for? I won't waste yours. If you wanna do that good loving gridiron, and you gotta be 18 plus for this one. And that's about that. Rock and roll. I've been in the open, I guess, since as long as I may remember, at least for 11 years maybe, since I don't remember my life prior to February 2014. I don't remember, but I have trouble remembering. That's the problem. When I go back, then it's like muddy waters, it's not clear. What was I doing before that? Was I a junkie? Was I doing drugs? Was I, I know that between summer 2014 and 2017, I was depressed. I was suicidal, and I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. In 2017, in August, around August, we left, me and my anonymous friend, for a trip. 3.5 day trip. 3.5 day trip. We left on a 3.5 day trip, but it took 3.5 days from Montreal, of course, to Vancouver, and that's what it is with that, and that's what it is with the go. So it took, of course, so many days just to get there, and of course to come back 3.5 days. So that was 7 days total just by bus, and we went to Vancouver, British Columbia in 2017, and then Halloween early. And then in September 20 of the same year, 2017, September, we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia. It took 25 hours and 44 days. 25 hours and 44 days, That's what it took, 25 hours and 44 days. And that's how we got to get drilling on that for the go. So that is something which we have, of course, to situate ourselves in the positions that event made me come out of being depressed and suicidal. And I established a strong esprit de corps with my fellow Canadians, brothers and sisters of the North American Collectif, our family. Pledge your allegiance. And that's 8 years ago. I celebrate that. I celebrate 8 years since I got out of being depressed and suicidal. And it's 166.9. The gas is 166.9. Is 166.9. Somebody's wearing that red, my favorite color, maybe Draconis, wearing on that red, and it's 166.9. In February 2020, right before COVID, which I survived it, the average cost of gas was 93 cents 5 years ago. 93 cents. So if you take into consideration that, it went up by more than 72%. Because now the average is about 163. Sometimes it's 156, 157, 161. So, but the average is around 160 something. But so that is more than 72 cents average. But that's so much in percentage, right? So that means, because if you calculate the stagnation of the salaries, it has eaten away of the purchasing power of the consumer citizen. It has eaten away. That's just, the numbers just popped in my brain, right? And mathematically, because I have Asperger's, so I kind of calculate these things. I just do. It's not even a volition. It's more like an automatic thing, It's kind of by will, but it's kind of also just because our brain is kind of sometimes functions that way, Asper brain. So that's what I calculated just now. The average check from Montreal Island, the average price in Canadian dollars of gas was around 93 cents. 93 cents. Now your site's 166. So that is more than, because it's 9 cents plus 166.9. So that is about it's about 73 cents. 73 cents more, 74, let's say, right? About that. But even that is in percentage is also close to 80. because it's 93 cents. So we could say that the price of gas averages more than 80% than what it was in February 2020. 80%. How many salaries you know have gone up? 80%. So 80% salary to have gone up since 2020, that means the average salaries have went up 4.4%. That's 20 times the ratio almost, because 80% divided by 4 is 20. So if it's about 4% only since February 2020, the majority of the salary increases, the salaries have only increased by that much since 2020. You follow the calculation? So of course that's 80 divided by 4. Divided by 4, that's 20. So the price of gas went up 20 times more than the salary went up. The price of gas, now that that's mathematics, proportion. The price of gas went up 20 times what the salary in percentage has increased. 20 times more. So for every dollar of increase in the salary, the price of gas has went $20. That's the ratio, 20 to 1. Can you imagine the stress, the added stress in the purchasing power? Because the more people have to go to work by gas, in gas consumption, maybe some people started just taking the public transit more. But not by much, by a certain percentage, yes. But mostly, I believe that most of the people, because of the choice of the big cities or living outside the city, had to cut down on other goods, not necessarily on the gas, because the gas has gotten so more expensive. That's just the mathematics of it. Those are different calculations, but they kind of revolve around the same principle, mathematical principles. So you realize how much that is. So once again, if the average price of gas in 2020 was 93 cents, right? 93 cents. Now, if today the price of gas is 166, the average price was 93 cents. So just do the division. 166 minus 93 cents. So that is 66 cents and 7 cents. That's 74.9 cents, right? So that is the increase in gas prices in the past 5 years. So if you calculate that in percentage, that's around 80% increase, right? 80% in percentage, right? So 80% in the past 5 years, how many salaries you know have increased by 80%? No, because the average salary increase in Canada is 4%. So you divide 80 by 4, that's 20. So mathematically, that's 20 times higher the price of gas than the salary increase. 20 times more. Can you imagine that mathematically? So what it does is it chips away at the price of the... It chips away at the power that one... So you spend more on gas, right? So you can buy less goods, but way more. Think about that mathematically. If you drive, I mean, I don't drive, but just because I'm looking at the cars and I'm calculating now, you know? Because I'm calculating now the cars and I'm trying to do a calculation in my head. Now it's just mathematics in my head. Now it's just mathematics. Math. Percentages. Salaries, wages. That's what's going on now. There's nothing else really. It's Asperger's, you know. It's just the Aspie brain is just different, and that's just like a microchips calculating the middle class, upper class, lower class, the stagnation of the salaries. So for example, my brothers and sisters here working to make a pizza, if their salaries only went up by 4% and they have to drive to work, that means that for every dollar they kind of lost of increase in salary, they kind of lost $20, because the ratio is 20 times higher. It's hardcore in percentages, right? Yeah. So in February 2020, the average price in the island of Montreal of gas was 93 cents, less than $1. Now, the price of gas is $1. You saw there is $1.66.9. So $1.66.9 minus 93 is exactly 70. Well, it's exactly by this 73.9, right? Yeah, 73.9. Because it's 93.7 and then to 100, then it's 66.9 plus 7, so that is 73.9, right? But vis-a-vis the 93 in percentage, that's around 80%. Because from 93 to 166.9 is not 74%, it's about 80%, because you got the 7 from 100 until you get to 100%. if that makes sense mathematically. So it's the calculation when we have to understand fully what we're doing, and to calculate, of course, all the civilizational things we got, of course, on the go now, and we have, of course, to situate ourselves, and we have, of course, to understand fully this mathematical question of the problem of the salary stagnation of the salaries, stagnation of the salaries. So this stagnation of the salaries is, of course, a big problem. The paradox here in Canada is that we got the tar sands. Supposedly the tar sands is the greatest reserve of petroleum, of natural reserves of petroleum. But the problem is extraction is costly, financially, monetary costly, and of course environmentally as well. Although there has been some progress on the environmental questions. But imagine if a scientist in Canada or United States, if we would discover how to extract it without pollution and in a cost-efficient manner, we would be both a gift from heaven, right? Because then we would not import petroleum at all. The United States mostly imports petroleum, but we wouldn't, because we got the tar sands, which is the biggest reserves, the tar sands in Alberta. But the problem, like I said, with the tar sands is that it is environmentally the cost. Environmental costs are high. Environmental costs are high. So that's where the problem lies with that. So the environmental costs are super high. And here I see that's a little bit of that light, see? Oh, on the screen of the smartphone, my work tool, it's red, but it's very visible on my screen. See, that's a web camera, and of course those 4 antennas are for audio. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that radio, I guess, picks up the volume, the noise. And for flock, we gotta get that public-private partnership to get the Draconis total integrated 911 protocols with all the CIT, citizen integration theory, for total security, total service, total defense. If you know what I'm referring about now, it's because I see this surveillance, and we need surveillance, but integrated with the citizenry. And of course, a lot of our brothers and sisters deserve to get a second chance. Nothing to give you. No candies, no dog bones. Hi. Taking out for a little walk. It doesn't mind the pollution from the cars. Doesn't sneeze, eh? Bye. My auntie there smiled and said, try to pull the dog. That's something which, of course, we gotta get on that. So that is, of course, the surveillance here, which we gotta get the total SSD, surveillance, security, and service plateau interactive, of course, across the North American civilizational complex. But see how, of course, it appears. How it appears, of course, all the North American collective. It appears in a general manner, of course, integrated. Of course, all the collective civilizational complex. Now we need to have more security services and defense across all the North American collective for total citizen integration, or total for the Dragon 911 new Dragon Army, total protocols for total security, total service, total defense in the congruency of where we are now. As of course we're vulnerable because of our impositions, of course, of several activities across the world, and via the DMAA theory, the direct military assistance and action, which of course has rendered us. And here is where my old neighborhood kind of begins. And we see there my new neighborhood kind of gets that surveillance. I don't know if there's one here, surveillance or security, whatever the case may be. Maybe there's one, maybe there's not. I'm not sure. Maybe there is. Maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I'm not totally sure. So of course all that civilizational plateau, and of course the feathers, quite cool feathers there. Yeah, I like the feathers there, you know, feathers.
No, you make a video, so.
Yeah, I'm making a video.
I say, let's smile.
You know, how you guys doing? Staying out of trouble? I have nothing to give you. I wish I would. Bye. I have nothing. Sometimes I give a bit of 10, 50 cents or $1, but now today I really don't have any. Let me check. No, I'm not gonna give 10 cents, you know, that's just not. Although I guess even if I would beg if 10 cents, I would appreciate even 10 cents, because 10 cents plus 10 adds to 20, you know, and then it adds up to $1, but I'm not gonna go back now. But and I was looking at the 4 feathers there because they had put feathers, and this is my own neighborhood, so we're my fellow brothers and sisters there who for X, Y, Z reasons they're in tough times, you know, and we got to get that rehabilitation, compassion by action. Aspie's we're compassionate, we're empathetic, it's just that we show it by action, you know, we show it by action. And here's my old neighborhood. I used to live down there in that old moldy basement, underground moldy basement. It was a small moldy place. I didn't even have a bathtub. I couldn't bathe. And I'm grateful I have one now, because I wish I could afford a massage therapy session. That's why friends with benefits only, you know. Can't afford one now, but I used to not have the kitchen was inside my room. So inside the room, I had a room and a bathroom without a bathtub, and it was very small. Very tiny, super tiny. Very small. I didn't even have a kitchen, you know. The kitchen was, of course, the kitchen was integrated inside, you know. The kitchen was integrated inside. Integrated inside. And of course, that is, of course, where we are now. And of course, the situational complex is where we have, of course, to give now. And of course, we got to left, of course, on the left, and on the right, on the left. And of course, all the left or right, of course, got to get on the left or right, and got to get doing with that. And got to get it for now. Of course, for the situational complex is where we are to get doing like that, and that's what it is with that. And that's how we have, of course, to get the simulacra. But of course, all here in the civilizational complex is where we are now, to be all this complexities of all our civilizational life and product acceptance, of course, of all our dynamics where we are now, is that this is my own neighborhood, and there's nothing that I will to go back to, you know. If I don't will to go back for nothing, is something where, of course, we have to be. And so this civilizational, because I moved, and of course I changed a lot, and that was my change, of course, down the way we have to be. And of course that is something where we gotta be doing, but it's always a memory, because I lived in that moldy place, and that moldy place is something where we gotta get doing like that. And that is just something where we have to cross on the other side now. Crossing on the other side now. This is where we are now, and that's what we gotta get on the loose, you know, something. Gotta cross prudently here. Watch the car, buddy. Watch the car. Watch the car, man. I don't want nobody getting hit by cars, and you gotta make love before, you know, before you get hit by cars, man. Nobody's getting hit by a car on my watch. You got close, eh? I calculated the distance, and that's what I calculated on that distance light. And that's what I gotta be doing with that, and that's what we have to get doing like that. And that's where we go, man. And my brother, sister, cousin almost got close. Make it back home safe, make loving, man. The car is about, because he was crossing, it was 4 seconds left, and the car was at fault because it got too close there, right? It got a bit too close. So gotta watch, of course, on that go. And here we are, you know. We gotta get it on the do, and we gotta get it on now. And that is, of course, just something where we have, of course, to simulate, and of course to be in the situational aspects where we are now. And that's where we are now, you know, to get it on the loving aspects of the life and the daily activities which we involve in. And maybe that's why I got saved, to save. I think I saved a few along the way in the past 11 years and 6 months. If you see some of my videos, sometimes I remove sharp objects. And in the past, I saved somebody from getting hit by a car, and even the youth, the young people, I screamed and they backed up because they were playing around, and I said, hey, watch the car. And I was like doing COVID 3.5 years, so maybe of course I gotta get it on that go. And there is something where they got on that situation where we got that's it with a situational awareness, of course, to be in all the domain where we are now of course in the situational actions where we are, in the prudence to be something where we are now, of course, to get on the go, and with something where we got all the domains, because we ask to show compassion by action, and that action by compassion, and vice versa. We're not bad, we're not evil, we're not negative, We're not bad, we're not bad, we're not negative, we're not evil. We're not bad, we're not negative, we're not evil, So we're not bad, we're not negative, we're not evil. Asperger's is not bad, it's not negative, it's not evil. We're different, yes. We're not bad, not evil. That's just what we are. That's just what we are. And that's just how we live. But there's a certain responsibilities in building bridges. So, yeah, that's my old neighborhood there begins, where the 4 feathers there. I think there were 5. There might have been 5. I could count at least 4. And I used to live in that moldy place, I guess I got goddess saved because I will to build a forgotten goddess. I always say I got goddess saved because I saved to save somebody along the way, to have a purpose in my surviving. And I was depressed suicidally from 2014 until 2017, and and I crossed Canada coast to coast. I said, wow, such a great country, so many things to have, to see, to do, so many things to do, to see. So I crossed Canada coast to coast, and that event made me come out of being depressed and being suicidal. I established a strong spirit core with my fellow Canadians and all who come to join us here from all over the world, my brothers and sisters in the 50 states. It's always for the 10, the 50, and the 63. Our empire, let it rise and let it be. Our empire, let it rise and let it be. Our empire, let it rise and let it be. The Democratic Imperial Republic of the 63 perpetually. By sign ASAP, Christmas Day, 25th of December, 25th, on the mountain, as it's a Dragon versus Trump event, have been him, and will continue to challenge Donald Trump to a boxing match, and have been challenging Donald Trump to a boxing match ever since 2018, when the granddaddy Trump, you made the mistake to impose tariffs on Canadian aluminum and steel. And to my American people, because I'm a Canadian American, for world peace as well, blah blah blah. All who come to join us in the new civilizational complex, because we are a new civilizational complex, and will be a new empire of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just. Of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just. Of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just. Of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just. Of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just. And the body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. The body is a pleasure, a temple for pleasure. The body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. The body is a temple for pleasure and purpose. And we gotta invest in it, and I'm investing in it now, and somebody else is investing by making some of that good loving, I guess. Sometimes you just gotta give some good love. No, no. Whew, I got a whiff of that cigarette. Last time I smoked a cigarette was when I crossed Canada coast to coast. I don't think I even finished it. Took like 4 puffs. Or a few smokes. When I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. That event made me come out of being depressed and being suicidal, and that's when I established the strongest with a core of my fellow Canadians and my brothers and sisters in the 50, and all the work which I'm making reference about mainly dates to me crossing Canada after I crossed Canada coast to coast in 2017. August I went to Vancouver, BC, British Columbia, out west, and in September we came back and we went to Halifax, Nova Scotia. So of course that was the great revelation for me, and because I was 3 years of depression, suicide. I almost took my life out. I was depressed, suicidal, you know. For Aspies we have 3 main problems, and one of it is the high depression and suicidal rates is 9 times higher than for you, the majority of the population of neurotypicals. You know, it's 9 times higher. 9 times higher. 9 times higher. 9 times higher, man. 9 times higher. And of course the high depression and suicidal rates coupled with the high unemployment rates, 11 times, 80%, sometimes even more than 80%. Flag spotted, gonna show mine off. Don't ask me when I got those stats, because my life prior to February 2014, which is it's more than 11 years and a half ago, that's a long time already, it remains a mystery. So my rebirth, I guess, the 4th rebirth, now this summer ends soon, eh? And 9 more days of summer, so in summer, spring, winter 2025, 2026 is heading on my 4th rebirth since I left that moldy place in my old neighborhood. It's still one island of the Hawk, H-A-W-K, Hawk Island, Montreal, metropolis of 2.5 million people. Of course, it's the 2nd most populated city in Canada and 7th or 8th in North America. So we ride it on that go because it was the first for many, many decades and centuries. Even Montreal, the most populated, and the whole metropolitan area is about 4.5 million, eh? And that's a big pothole there. I show it often when I go during the day, and yeah, that's got a lot of work to do on that. So that is where we stand, you know, in the life where we are now, and of course all the plurality where I have no choice but to go and pee. Oh yeah, I really had no choice in that matter. I had to go in the bushes there in the Publik, but I would have peed all over me. I wanted to go pee right about I crossed that hotel. It's not really a hotel, kind of looks like one, but kind of looks a bit Cuban-esque hotel from Cuba, but it's not really. Supposedly I went. So last time I actually went out from the island, it's a long time ago, it's 2017 when I crossed Canada. I haven't left Montreal, that means, for 8 years now. 8 years since I've been just on the island of Montreal. I mean, it's a big island, so I got a lot of different, it's like a whole universe here, but that's been so long, you know. That's been so long since I haven't been, you know. Out of the country, 8. That's just what we have, of course, to be doing, you know. That's just what we gotta be doing, you know. So we have to be doing on that RockRoll, you know. It's just something which we have. And that's just something what we gotta be doing, you know. Just left the island a long time ago. So that is just something where we are, to be situational awareness for me, and that's just where we are now. And of course, all the situational awareness that I haven't left the island in 80 years, something like that, and 2017. And of course, supposedly I went in Cuba, I went in Cuba, of course, back then when I went in Cuba, of course, it's a long time ago, but I don't remember having gone to Cuba. It's just that supposedly I went in 2009, so that's supposedly from my writings in my journal, whatever. Sometimes the memory comes back, it's not important whether the memory comes back or not, and it's just something which of course we have now or don't have to take into account or consider, because it's not really important for me to who I was before February 2014. I'm not that person anymore, just like I changed names several times, just like that Caesar Superdome, where of course my 49ers lost in Super Bowl 47, one of my favorite ones. But before I digress, we're going to finish on Asperger's, and we're going to of course do the situational awareness where we are now in all the complementary positions, where my will to build the 4 is of course in concordance with all you neurotypicals. The 99 point whatever percent comparing to us is something which of course we have to do to build those bridges. And consequently, as I encourage you all to work out, train, exercise, got to take a moment to salute the truckers, the firefighters, the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the plumbers, all those flipping some burgers now. How many burgers? How much food across the 63 since I started this video? Quantification. See, that's Asperger's brain. Of course, there's a definite number, of course, of hamburgers, of cheeseburgers, of pizzas, of lettuce, of all the things which, of course, have been, of course, produced, of course, across the North American collective in the inner dimensions of the fabrication of food, especially in the fast food, and I've served. And of course, there's an XYZ ABCD 1, 2, 3, 4 amount of money that has been, of course, transacted. Now, whether from credit cards or from Interact. So that's why my DRT best for the creation of the UE, and we have to get that total SSD, security, service, and defense transposition, of course, to be it on the concomitant side, of course, to be able for us to navigate and install a new world order ASAP. So back before I go on to my theories and propositions and protocols with a geopolitical, social, philosophical, which is a major call for a public-private partnership, the statement I pursue is that, of course, we have, of course, to characterize, and of course, we have to stimulate the internal economic via, of course, the consequences where we are now, the appellation, of course, of all the territorial positions of the integral North American complex, which constitutes 63 states, new states, of course, 10 provinces, 3 territories, which are gonna become states, 13 just like the original. We're gonna add and fuse together. Before we get into that, of course, just gonna finalize on Asperger's, is that we have 3 main problems. Those main problems are lack of friends. We don't have a lot of friends, Aspies. That's why I have the solution for me, The solution is now on friends with benefits only. Friends with benefits. Of course, that is the solution for me. So, black, white, rainbow, men and women, don't waste my time. Pledge your allegiance, or friends with benefits only. We don't have a lot of friends. We have trouble maintaining friends because we're different, right? So this difference makes us that we have trouble maintaining friends. Maintaining friends is a problem for us, Aspies. So that is, of course, a problem. We lose friends, we have problems maintaining friendships. And of course, for me, I have the solution, friends with benefits only. That's how we're gonna rock and roll. Don't waste my time, I won't waste yours. That's it. No need to XYZ, blah, blah, blah. That's it. Solution for me. I'm happy, joyous even now, I'm not somebody, Depressed, being suicidal, and I love seeing gardens like this. And when I go to the mountain, I'm pretty joyous, Joyous. Sometimes I get moody and lustful. I gotta be lustful today, even now a bit. But when I get home, we gotta do that healthy MASTURBATION, and that's about how we do it. We rock and roll with that little clit, androgynous little scar, and I put a cream. It sometimes goes rocket up high, that erection, and we gotta play that pipe rock and roll. So that's how we do it, and But back to the geopolitics. Back to Asperger's, lack of friends. So friends with benefits only for me. And of course, the other problem is high unemployment rate. So it is a high unemployment, very high, 11 times more than the neurotypicals. 11 times. So for every one of you who's unemployed, it's 11 of us Aspies. Can you imagine? And we're the tiny small fraction of the population. We're the tiny community, less than 1% of the population. 1 out of 300 really sometimes, you know, depending, mostly for North America, right? But variations in different geolocations. But it's so tiny small, but the community, the unemployment is 80%, sometimes even higher. That's 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. That's 4/5. You realize the mathematical statistics. The statistics are just so brutal for unemployment for Aspies that, of course, I had many jobs, and Aspies, we have jobs. It's just like we lose them. We Aspies, generally, a lot of Aspies lose their employments. Myself, it's been 4 months, 3 weeks, a few days, 4 months, 3 days, on and off. We lose them after a few months, or it doesn't get the probation, past the probation, because we can be sometimes in our speech direct and straightforward, and certain things we just socially, it's more awkward, weird. We just don't really get, you know. Things such as gossip, we block, our brains blocks, and what do I say? The person's not there, they're not discussing really his ideas, his theories, or ways to find the solutions for betterment, 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 you know? So then our brain blocks. We kind of don't know to navigate these things, you know? And it's been a hell of a journey those past years, you know? And it's been 9 years since I've been diagnosed by several individuals with experience in the healthcare system, or with people with Asperger's and autism generally. And only about 3.5 years ago I started accepting it. I was sick of it during COVID, and I had COVID. I was like very sick. It was like death, pestilence, and disease between February 2020 and March 2020. Between February 2020 and March 2020, I had COVID, you know, and I had it, and that is, of course, the position where I had survived it. And please keep the protocols of COVID as much as you can. I hand sanitize it, open carry my hand sanitizer, and I urge you all to please, as much as you can. I know for some, including myself, the financial burden has to be taken into consideration, but we got to incentivize and we got to finance fitness and well. But see, this is an antiseptic hand sanitizer here. I'm not getting sponsored publicly or privately by any institutions, organization. I'm not getting any private or public sponsorship, but this is, of course, the hand sanitation, the hand sanitizer here, which you have, of course, to use yourself. The hand sanitizer where you have to use yourself now, of course, in all the dynamics where we are now. So that is just a call from Citizen Dragon. Nobody's born a dragon, you become one, not even myself. So the problem is high unemployment, very high, too high, way too much. We can't accept this in the 21st century. Lack of friends, and the high depression and suicidal rates is 9 times higher than anywhere. Because I still am financially stressed and always open for business. I'm rich, got those trillions of kisses credited from the goddess. Got those trillions of kisses credited from the goddess. Got those trillions of kisses credited from the goddess. No. Got those trillions of kisses credited from the goddess. Credited from the goddess, you know. Got those trillions, you know. Got those trillions of kisses credited from the goddess. So it's always God bless and goddess kiss. It's always God bless and goddess kiss, you know. It's always God bless and goddess kiss. It's always God bless and goddess kiss. The Imperial Republic of the 63, always 63 for the 63, let it be. In compendium, perpetually, let it rise and let it be. And it's always God bless and goddess kiss. And since 2018, it's always Dragon versus Trump. We're going to build the fort. We're going to discuss now the building of the fort, close the chapters on Asperger's. Got to close the chapter by saluting my fellow Aspie who sent me last year $25.44, by which I bought a bottle of wine for the Sabbath. I bought some bacon and I bought some cheese and I bought some wafers. So I bought four different food items. So that was fun with that, and that was $25.44 put to good use, and that is just something which we got to get doing with that, and something which we have to appellate, of course, in the interjectionality where we are now, to appellate and to discuss the 4 buildings that I will to build with your help support, of course, with your support and help as much as one can. The 4 on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the North American, the Imperial People's Coliseum, the Imperial People's Coliseum, the Imperial People's Coliseum on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the Imperial People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than the Caesar Superdome, and than the Caesar Superdome. That's what we're gonna build on the Canadian-US border. We're gonna build a massive sports arena complex, which is gonna be 11 times bigger than Caesar Superdome, where my 49ers lost in Super Bowl 47. 49ers lost in Super Bowl 47. Oh, Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. One of the nicknames is Blackout Ball, Bro Ball, Harbor Ball. Has several names, and that is something what we have, of course, to do. Has several nicknames, you know. Super Bowl 47 has several nicknames. It was one of my favorites, top 4 favorites. The 3 first ones are when my 49ers win in the 80s and 90s, especially that 55-pointer. 55-10, you know, that was a hell of a baloo. But this one, Super Bowl 47, was played and fought and battled out just like many other Super Bowls in what now today is known as the Caesar Superdome, which changed names just like I changed names till officially to get that paper money to officially change my name, Adrian Hanna Dragon. Keep my holy, sacred, and divine name out of your mouth. If it's not for a blessing, keep my holy, sacred, and divine name out of your mouth. If it's not for a blessing, keep my holy, sacred, and divine name out of your mouth. If it's not for a blessing. Hope we have an understanding. Adrian Hanna Dragon, laying the foundations of the Kingdom Empire, Democratic Republic with trillions of kisses. So that is what we're gonna do together in the ice here on the island of the Hawk, N.A.C.W.P, my totem bird. That Super Bowl 47 was fought and played, battled out between the 49ers and the Ravens, between the 49ers and the Ravens. I don't remember personally, but I watch every year and Super Bowls from 49ers, and sometimes I work out on the same Super Bowls and over, and this even when 49ers lose, but they go to the Super Bowl several times, you know. I know we lost against the Chiefs by 3 points also 2 years ago, I know. Give some charity, NFL, NHL, NBA, MLB, reduce the ticket costs owners and finance more the PVHL, women's professional sports. I'm a bit disappointed, upset I was because I saw on the Forbes list of the top 50 paid athletes, multi-millionaire athletes, the most paid from number 1 to number 50 for last year, 2024. Of last year until December, and it came out, I believe, in February, March of this year, 2025. Not even one was a woman. All the top 50 highest paid athletes were all men. Of the top 50, only like on, I don't know exactly after the 50, but the top 50, not even tennis players who made a few millions, but not even one was a woman athlete. Can you imagine that? All the top 50 paid athletes are all men. Top 50 last year. That's not cool. Anyways, dancing is my favorite sport, you know. I love dancing, and I love football, gridiron, and dancing is my favorite sport. Although I love all sports and fitness activities, boxing, gymnastics, and other sports and fitness activities, and that's how we rock and roll. And I think here's the consulate of China, or the embassy or consulate of China. Gotta check, because every time I pass during the day, it has the big on the door. I see the red and the yellow stars, the emblem of the People's Republic of China. So I know it's either the embassy or the consulate of the People's Republic of China here. It's kind of gated, and see, this is risk here. Somebody can trip on it, so just put it on the side. Somebody could go with a bike and trip on it there, you know. And these also, if they come with the bike, just put them on the side, you know. Somebody can trip, can go by the phone. See, my cousin there went with the phone, you know, checking on the phone and tripping on them. My cousin, or whatever, consider all my family here, so, because you can go by phone, and him, she, they, whatever case may be, fellow citizens, goes on here on the side and just trips, you know, just text and trips on that. So just move them. You can come by bike and, you know, just don't leave them there on the side so they could trip over the side, you know. That's always a little bit of that, and that's something what we have, of course, to do. And that is, of course, where the dynamics, where we are to interact with my fellow citizens, holding hands there, little cousins, doing some of that good love that always quadruples my smile, and that's always good. And you know, they could have tripped. You saw that. I prefer them seeing holding hands and continuing their safe journey, holding hands and watching a movie and hugging for me also, because I would need a hug, you know. But you hug for me, I'm okay. I'll be okay. I'll go to the mountain, I'll go eat my wafers, and if you hug for me like you never hugged before, that's the message, blah blah blah. Don't waste my time, don't waste yours. Life is short, man. Life is short, you know. Life is short. Do good deeds, balance your bad deeds, and stay away from gossip as much as you can. Solve solutions and increasing acts of goodness and kindness, charity, and them holding hands there. See, I just 44 meters or 44 yards. Questions. Boutros. But they could have discussed and hold hands, and they could have tripped just 44 meters before I came to push those rocks. Maybe they would have tripped on them. See, maybe that's what I was saved by the goddess. Maybe that's why I don't remember my life prior to February 2014. Maybe I was saved by the goddess to do some good deeds, to do some good deeds. Gotta get hydrated now. My mouth is getting a little bit on that. Left and right, can't, of course, get it on the. Once we get to the top, we're gonna drink some of that good HYDRATE, that H2O, because I'm getting on that thirsty, as you should when you work out. So see, maybe that's how I got saved by the goddess from that moldy place where I used to live 10, 11 years ago, as I moved in summer 2015. So I've been living there 10 years, and I hope 11 is gonna be the year after I move next year, because I want a bigger place so I can work out, try and exercise more and do more work. And I can't have anybody over now. These are gorgeous. I can't have any open space. I can't have anybody invite anybody where I live. I can't invite anybody. I can't invite anybody. You know, I can't invite anybody where I live now. It's too small. But see you on the mountain. Let's do it. Christmas Day, 25th. Xmas Day, 25th, 24th, 25th of December. Let's sign the Imperial Republic. Imperial Democratic Republic. Consequentially, Imperial Democratic Republic articles. Imperial Republic articles in December for the fusion of Canada and the implementation of my DRT. And let's build a 4 on the Canadian-US border. Let's build the biggest ever sports coliseum arena ever built. The Imperial People's Coliseum. Which is gonna have sports in perpetuity, sports and fitness activity in perpetuity, 24/7 sports, beautiful yellow flowers, quadruple my smile. And once me and Donald Trump are gonna inaugurate it by having a boxing match, inaugurating by fighting in a sportsmanlike boxing match on the Canadian-US border. And it's gonna be 11 times bigger than the Caesars Superdome, which changed names. It used to be known as the Mercedes-Benz, before that Louisiana Superdome, before it changed names like I changed names. And you know, nothing that I want to go back to. That is something where we have, of course, to be and to appellate all the plurality where we are now. And of course, it changed names just like I changed names. And we're going to build the Forgotten Goddess, GODDSS, goddess as well. Forgotten Goddess is going to be 11 times bigger, of course, than the Forgotten Goddess, bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory, 11 times bigger than the St. Joseph's Oratory. Here in Montreal, we have a St. Joseph's Oratory. We're gonna build a Forgotten Goddess temple. Credit trillions of kisses for the Empire. With the House of the Dragon, pyramid, scarlet, crimson, our shades of red, RED. The pyramid, House of the Dragon. I can have open house, open doors there, and the Rainbow People's Palace. For my fellow neurodivergent community, the Rainbow People's Palace. For my fellow neurodivergent community, fellow Aspies, fellow neurodivergents, autistics, and fellow LGBTQ+, because I'm queer myself, so I queer that up, So universal revolutionary centrist, my centrism is tied hand in hand with my trinity of theories, the DRT, Detro Fusion Theory, the DFT, Democratic Fusion Theory, the CIT, the Trinity of Theories to be implemented via LOVE. That's how it's gotta be, in perpetually. For the 63, encouraging all to work out, train, exercise. Working out, train, exercising, has been and is, will be my medicine and therapy of choice. And that's just how we are and how we do with that. And that's just the appellation where we are now and all the the vision and the plurality where we are to be involved with all the situations and all the life affirming liveness, being alive, This year I never saw so many fireflies atop the mountain, and by the side where I go, you've seen those videos, how many fireflies I see, and there's some bit of fireflies with that, and that's just where we are now to do and to rock and roll and to be and to see those holding hands. Well, I'll be just after I just clear the path from obstacles. Clear the path from obstacles, It's like in the path there are obstacles. Maybe I saved that couple. tripping, I ain't never gonna get in the way of love, My goddess calls me cuck, C-U-C-K. Well, I'm gonna be the greatest cuckold in the universe, If you're black, you're white, you wanna LOVE or do that LUST, If that free, you gotta be 18+. Adrian Hanna Dragon, androgynous, pansexual, Aspie artist, athlete, philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst, interior. She's financially stressed. I got wafers at home, I got coffee, I got tea, I got wafers. Bought them on special, $4 for 500 grams. That was a good deal, 500 grams, and they're pretty good. Pretty good ones, actually among the best for the price. Among the best, not necessarily the best by quality, but combine the quality and the quantity, they're very good. Interestingly enough, I checked the label and they're product of Israel. Interesting enough, because whenever I hear that name as a mystic who believes in reincarnations, as I was a dancer in Miriam's cohort, the sister of Moses, and the priestess Eritrea who orated the great Eritrea to Lycurgus. I was the priestess Pythia who orated the great Eritrea to Lycurgus as well, but as a cohort of the dancing priestesses of Miriam, prophetess, sister of Moses, who was called the prophetess. If you read Genesis 50, you see that Jacob, aka Israel, was embalmed, and like the ancient Egyptian religion prescribes it, which is kind of a mystery of mysteries. So it's quite mysterious thereafter, because those are also mystic goddess. The invocation of the goddess also partook those sacred ritual rites. And that's just a mystery. I'm not going to go into a mystic, but I am a mystic as well, priestess. Rise the dragon. Goddess calls me C-O-C-K, so I say, yes, no problem, mistress. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm a piece of dust. Yes, I have my faults, I'm flawed, I'm vices, but paradoxically, my theories, initiative is best for where we are now in the 21st century, where we are now in the 21st century, in the collective 21st century, North American civilizational complex, and all the situational awareness, where we are now, to be, it is, as of course, have predicted, as have predicted. It's unfolding as I have predicted in 2019. So I'm making a reference. Now I'm just going to finalize on why I need to build the 4. I got 4 seconds, interesting enough. 1, 2, 3, 4 and a bit. 4 and 3 3/11. A little bit more than 4. So let's build the 4. The Imperial People's Coliseum to be 11 times bigger than where many Super Bowls were spread out in Louisiana, New Orleans. Now the name is Caesar Superdome, but before that it was known as the Mercedes-Benz, and before that it was known as the Louisiana Superdome. And me and Donald Trump, we're going to inaugurate. We're going to fight it, of course, together in a boxing match. We're going to fight, of course, in that boxing match, and that's what we're going to do. And, of course, fight in the appellation, in the prudence, to, of course, fight. Me and Donald Trump, we're going to fight on the Canadian-US border in a sportsmanship like, and we're going to build it. That's going to be inauguration. And, of course, with that Coliseum, we're also going to build, of course, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple, Forgotten Goddess, created with kisses, trillions of kisses. Forgotten Goddess Temple. Forgotten Goddess Temple, you know, the Forgotten Goddess Temple is something which we need to do, and we need to build it in the categories, of course, where we are now, and that is something which we need to do to build together. Forgotten Goddess Temple in the house, pyramid, the house of the dragon. That is something which we gotta be building, the house of the dragon, inconsequently. And of course that is something what we gotta get doing with that, and that is just something which we have, of course, to do, and that is something which we gotta get on that drill, you know, to build it, and to consequently build that building and the Forgotten Goddess Temple, to get it on the go now. And that is something which we gotta appellate together to build in the constituencies, to be doing like that, and something where we gotta get drilling together, you know, something where we have to admit and reciprocally, of course, to be in the conclusion where we are now, that I'm going to now, you know, let my main out here. Gonna let my main out, and we're gonna get up the mountain. Gonna get on the mountain with that, and that is something which we're gonna conclude on the being of all the civilizational complexes where we are now, to be in the solubles and go in the darkness, go in the darkness, go in the darkness. Something which we have, of course, to do, and go on that darkness around the body there, concomitantly to be doing now. I just love coming here. Sometimes I just let my main out and watch it. The mistress can be, of course, a severe mistress, a mistress where we are now, to be on the dynamics, of course, to be and get it on that loving side. Thank you, Hydro-Quebec workers, who build, of course, these big buildings with that. Hydro-Quebec plants, it does not pollute, you know, does not pollute, and it's something which is super good. Oh yeah, I feel so good with that. That is something which feels so good, and that is just something which, of course, we gotta be doing now. Yeah, so let's build. Oh yeah, I'm happy now. Joyous. Every time I come here, I get a sense of joy, you know, and that is that sense of joy, and that is that kind of, you know, all the suffering, all the pain. It's at the top of the mountain. When I go, it's give flashes of reincarnations, past lives, and sometimes a man, a woman, a man. Here I was a woman in 1688, and a priestess of ancient Egypt, priestess of ancient Egypt. That's what we are, and that's what we gotta get doing like that, and that is something which we have to appellate in all the implementations, in all, of course, the situational aspects where we are now, to be in all the situations where we are and get on that domain, you know, because this is a mistress which, of course, is a little bit on that harsh, a little bit of a harsh mistress with it, and that's what we have to do, and that's what we have to get it on the go now. We see the shadow, or there's a light, there's a shadow, I guess, and you know, wait. I suggest you stay in the light, because the mistress is fierce. Sometimes you gotta submit, you know, to Mother Nature, you know. Nature, you know, it's sometimes our natures as individual sovereign citizens of the world, of our coming empire of the 63, as a new civilizational compass, as we work for Mother Nature, as I've been doing for years and years and years here, picking up the garbage, picking up the garbage and picking up the compost and picking up that garbage in the forest. For years and years I've been cleaning for Mother Nature. Maybe that's what I was saved, you know, to save somebody, the couples there, and to save somebody with that, and to save somebody on the go, and that is just what you gotta get doing with that, you know. And I love coming here, you know, so that is something which I gotta be doing, you know, all the time in the plurality, of course, where we are now, to stand and to be mindful of all the civilizational complex where we are now to achieve. And it's always an achievement of victory when I come here. And I gotta salute the Hydro-Quebec workers, because civilization is a privilege, eh? To have this light in your homes. You know, it took some brains and muscle to build the 63 dams across the North American Collectif, and the construction workers and I will to build the 4. And gotta salute the construction workers, you know, because RockRoll would not move those buildings and skyscrapers, and it takes muscle as well as blah 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 philosophy, eh? We get break down those illusions sometimes, eh? Because civilization is a privilege, and you know, the truckers require some muscle and brains and knowledge, and going on the highways in our whole mega cities, how they were built, and the skyscrapers and underground, all the aqueducts and the technical aspects of our civilization is quite something which sometimes we take for granted, you know. So now as we enter into the darkness, I encourage you all to stay here by the side of the light, you know. It's better if you try to venture out, and in the dark here you might of course come with some lights, but you have to keep in mind that it is a risk. And if of course I die, you gotta bury me with Papa Crowley up in New Jersey, a third of me, and we're gonna see each other at the side of the light. I don't know how long it'll take, but it's gonna take some time. And here the mistress is of course a good, fair mistress. She's got her justice, she's got her ways, but it is of course something which of course we have to come. I didn't bring the light, I got it a little bit of that light from the left and from the starlight, and I get to break, you know, when I come here in the night, I just am at peace, you know, with myself and my struggles, my pain, my suffering, and I get joy here. Although, you know, I ain't got money and I ain't got this, but you know, I've reached a level of freedom, you know, and very few of us are entitled to fight for freedom, especially, you know, here in the North American civilization, because we're a new civilization, you know. And all my brothers and sisters, sometimes we're so diverse, just me with Asperger's and autism, and you know, and my brothers and sisters, of course, were blacks, my neighbors included, you know. So if you want to love, you gotta be a man or woman, black or white, and just don't waste my time. I don't like violence. I am hyper vigilant, and I don't turn the other cheek, you know. And the song is, may I be avenged 11-fold. You done got the warning, you done been told. May I be avenged 11-fold. You done got the warning and the message that I've been told. May I be avenged 11-fold. You done got warned, you gotta been told. May I be avenged 11-fold. You done got warned, you gotta been told. May I be 11-fold. You done been warned, you gotta been told. And that's what we gotta get doing like that. And that's what we gotta get drilling on the go now, to get it on the left and on the right and in the middle, of course, to get it in and get it in the satisfactory aspects, of course, where we are on the appellation, where we drill it here in the darkness. And you know, you get some lights from above the sky, but sometimes people come with lights. I have the lights, I just didn't bring them because my eyes kind of see in the dark, and here my illusions are kind of, you lose your illusions here, you know, your sense of self and the majesty of the forest in the darkness at night, with the flora and the fauna and the sounds of nature. You hear the sounds of grasshoppers and all sorts of creatures in the blackness, in the darkness, in the blackness here, you know, devoid of civilization, but still alive in the sense that there is a perfection in the nature. There's a perfection, and then you blend with your own self and your nature and the inclinations and the sun and the moon, because now the sun rises and sun sets, right? There's always a sunrise and a sunset, and then you Again, I don't recommend it to come here without the lights. I know the trail, and I make love with my mistress here in a cuckold manner. I'm her good little cuck, C-U-C-K, good cuckold. But I'm such a good cuckold that she revealed to me some of her secrets as she dances with her brother the sun on the night sky of the stars, and of course the moon. So she reveals some of those secrets with me, and that is something which we gotta be doing, to get it on the go with that satisfaction. B, I'm not alone here. I'm with the goddess nature, and I'm with the goddess nature, forgotten goddess, still dances with her brother sun, who gets a kiss from the bigger sister above, the infinite space, infinite stars above, the Aya. Bury me with Papa Crowley, Aleister Crowley, in New Jersey, 93, and that's just how we are and how we do, and that's just how we're gonna get doing with the drill in all the appellational instances where we are now, to be and to, of course, see ourselves to be in the appellatives and in the normatives of all the congruencies of where we are in nature. As you can see, some of those lights there, see, they are still utilizing the light below. There's citizens who are jogging and who are taking their time to come here in the mountain, and they're using their headlights. I guess they got those lights, and I got a little bit of light from the cell phone, but it doesn't capture that well, but you can see that from above. Actually, you get used to it, and then you see kind of from the skylight, from the lights from the sky, and of course you can see part of the lights because we're ascending the mountain from atop, from atop the mountain, and that's what we do, and that's what we get here. Of course, the aspects where we are now in the dark, and whenever I come here, I remind myself of past lives and previous incarnations. Past lives and previous incarnations. Past lives and previous incarnations. Past lives and previous incarnations, which I lived. Sometimes a man or woman. I lived as a woman here between 1688 and 1735, and even before colonization. Was a pastoral nature worship, and I used to dance naked. Was a sort of priestess on the mountain. See that light there that you see? Those are people below. They're still on the mountain, but they're below. They're going there on the side. But we are upper layer, not the topmost, but we are on the upper layer. The problem here is sometimes the branches fall. That's why I say if branches fall on me, you gotta bury me with Papa Crowley. Every 11 years, send me from here, from atop at the back of the Belvedere Conjurnac. At the back of the Belvedere Conjurnac, bury me there, and every 11 years rotate me, send my body into Cairo, the city of the pyramids in Cairo, where the pyramids are, and then 11 years in Hampton, New Jersey, and rotate me. And again, where was I born? I guess I'm being reborn here on the island of Montreal. Maybe I was born here. I always say I died here on the island. I'm being reborn here on the island. I'm being reborn here on the island. I died here on the island. And that's what it is with that. And that's what we gotta get doing with the drill. So of course I'm being reborn. I died here on the island. I'm being reborn here on the island. And that's what it is with that. And that's what we gotta get doing with the drill. So here we love coming. We love being here. But I'm not alone. I'm commuting with Mother Nature in her perfection. It's just a darkness, and her darkness is not necessarily evil again or bad. I gotta be a good cuckold, because her hairs are just these majestic trees, and unfortunately sometimes I get goosebumps because these trees also remind me of a past life in the previous incarnations when I took orders from Vlad the Impaler, when I took orders from Vlad the Impaler, when I took orders from Vlad the Impaler, when I took orders from Vlad the Impaler in a past life. So that was, I don't want to discuss that incarnation way too much because just the sheer terror of That incarnation is quite unspeakable. Back to what I will to build the fort together with you, and let's build the Imperial People's Colosseum, the Forgotten Goddess Temple. Imperial People's Colosseum, Forgotten Goddess Temple. Let's build the Forgotten Goddess Temple, Imperial People's Colosseum. Let's build the dragon, the army, the dragon army, the dancing goddess army with it, of course, in all the collective aspects. Well, we are now to be in the civilizational plurality of all the civilizational aspects where we are now involved and engagement, to be, of course, on the side of the things where we are now, to be on the plural side of all the communicational aspects where we are, and to be witnessing this special domain now where we are in the forest, on the mountain, my mistress, and try to live by the law of the Lema as much as I can, being a little bit of a C-U-C-K, you know, to the goddess, with a skuckle never, and General Dragon nonetheless. That is something which we gotta get doing with that, and that is something which I have to say, and that's something which I gotta be doing with that, and that's what it is with that, and that's what I gotta get saying, and also that's what we gotta get saying. Right, so let's build together the four, and now I'm going to discuss the DMAA, the direct, the direct military assistance or action. Direct military assistance or action is my theory. It's not just a theory, but it's a philosophical framework. It's a frame of reference, and actually it's a working tool for the future. It's a working tool for the future, whereas we will build a common plateau of understanding, and we're going to implement it just like NATO says. Just like NATO says, of course, animus in consuelo liber, 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 animus in consuelo liber. That is a mind unfettered in deliberation. See the lights of the city, Hawkeye, Montreal. So a mind unfettered in deliberation is, of course, what we are and what we're gonna do together. Of course, together, as of course we're gonna implement the DMA, the direct military assistance or action, the direct military assistance or action, the direct military assistance or action. The DMAA, direct military assistance or action, is a philosophy, is a theory, is a philosophical framework for the working of the plateau of NATO, and that is something which we gotta be doing. So, Dragon Army, you gotta say you love black and white and rainbow, cock and pussy. You gotta sing that cadence, because we are gonna be the army of the free, the brave, the strong, the loving, and the just here in the empire. Black, white, and rainbow. Together, free, brave, love, and strong. Free, brave, the brave, the loving, the strong, the free, the brave. So that is what we're gonna do together in the position where we are now, in the complementary satisfactory appellations that of course this is what we're gonna be doing like that, and that is something which we're gonna get doing on the drills, and that is something which we're gonna get on that go, you know. So that is something which you're gonna have to do together in the complementary position where we are now, to be in the dynamics where you are, and to be in the confluences where you and I together discuss the DMAAA, direct military assistance, and us, direct military assistance and action, direct military assistance and action, the DMAA, the direct military assistance and action, which we're gonna discuss together in a complementary position where we are now to discuss it after we get that city and we get that good hydration to discuss it in the appellatives, of course, of the circumstantial positions where we are now at the headquarters of the dancing goddess and the dragon kingdom and all the appellatives where it is to build a kingdom empire here. That is where we are now, and that is what we gotta get doing like that, and that's what we gotta get drilling like that, all the way for the top, and that is what we're gonna get doing like that, you know, always for the butchers, the bakers, the nurses, the doctors, the firefighters, the plumbers, the electricians, the butchers. We made it to the top. That's what we got here at the bog. And that's a beautiful garden here. You can see red. You can get it. You can get it with that. And that's what we're gonna get drilled here. Here we got this one out here. Get that hydration. And that's what we gotta get doing like that, you know. All the way for that hydration, gotta get doing for that, and gotta love it on the loving here on the side, you know. That's something which we gotta get doing like that for XYZ. That's what we gotta get that hydration, man. HYDRATE. Yo. On est. On s'en fout. Oh, there's a satellite in the sky. There we go. J'ai compris le message. So back into the darkness we go, but back into the darkness. Ow. So the DMA, direct military assistance and action, is of course the direct military assistance and action, which we have of course to consequently do. Meditate. It's a theoretical framework of NATO. It's a theoretical framework for NATO. So the DMAAA, direct military assistance and action, is of course a theoretical framework. The direct military assistance or action is a theoretical framework for NATO. That is the NATO, of course, Congress, which has to, well, NATO as a system has to deliberate whether to take DMAA in the future. The DMAA in the future, the direct military assistance and action in the future, right? So the DMAA is not just a theory, it's a philosophy. It's a philosophy, and of course that philosophy is of course the philosophy where you have to deliberate in the future consequence, where we have of course this plurality of the being, of course where we are involved in the situational projections where we are now to be, in all the situational relations where we are now to be appellative, and of course to be in the domain name when we have. So the DMAA is very important that one, that you pay attention to it, that you revise it if you're into geopolitics. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, is a theory, is a theoretical framework. It involves layers of wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and it's vis-a-vis NATO, vis-a-vis the actions or the assistance that NATO partakes with other conflicts, within other conflicts that are non-NATO related, right? Non-NATO related. So if it could be a concrete example, Ukraine is not part of NATO. Was not part of NATO, is not part of NATO, Israel is not part of NATO, Taiwan is not part of NATO. So it involves, of course, multiplicity, of course, of conflicts or involvement in conflicts. And again, because I had the discussion with my anonymous friend who brought it to my attention, how it can be perceived as not compassionate or empathetic. It's not that it's that. It's that just that it has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. So providing food, providing assistance such as food, providing assistance such as sanitation pads, providing health pads, sanitation pads, soap, food items, or of course bandages, or hand sanitizer, soap, or that manner. It's strictly military, DMAA, direct military assistance and action, or assistance. It is a theory, it is a protocol made, of course, from yours truly as a philosopher, geopolitical theoretical analyst and theorist, which has to do, of course, only and solely relatively to the NATO complex. So here we're gonna just show, that's my favorite skyscraper there. See, look at that pyramid. I can't see the top of it. Usually it's light, but now there's no light on it, and that's the bridge, Champlain Bridge there, that you can see the multicolors. So that usually there's light on it. Pyramid. That's awesome. Whoever built that skyscrapers, rock and roll. If you can build skyscrapers, you rock. Wow! Imagine all the skyscrapers, how they were built by cranes. You need cranes, of course. Imagine how to build all, to bring all that weight up against the gravity. It's quite something if you think about it. Construction workers, of course. There's the construction workers, baby. And they're sweat, and all that. We're gonna build some more. Let's go rock and roll into the darkness. Back to where we go. Here we go. So the direct military assistance and action is something which, of course, we have to rock and roll with that, and that is just something where we gotta get doing with that, and that's just something where we have to be doing on the side of the things, where we have to admire the city from different angles here in Montreal, of course. Hawk Island, that's just something where we have to be, and that is something where we gotta be doing this together, you know, to appreciate the beauty of nature in concordance, you know, with civilization, such as those beautiful lights, which I gotta say that all the lights are clean, zero pollution, zero emission. Comes from Hydro-Quebec, you know, comes from Hydro-Quebec, and of course that naturalis from Hydro-Quebec is water, hydroelectric water, and that is the appellation where it is now, the hydroelectric water where we are now, to be in the fundamental aspects, whereas of course the theory and the protocols of the DMAA has to be ASAP. It's the ASAP, with an emergency and urgency, has to be placed at the highest level of NATO. So if you're an ally, supporter, write letters concerning the DMA. My dream, support how you can, volunteer, and do, of course, the implementation of the collective once we are now to be together on the side of this situational awareness. DMAA, direct military assistance or action. Direct military assistance or action is a strategy as well, is a theoretical framework. So it's not a theory only, it's a theoretical philosophy, a theory to be put into practice. A practicable working theory and philosophy, which of course can be put into the theory and practice, which can be implemented furthermore in all the consequences where we are now, of course, to be vis-a-vis all the plurality where we are, of course, the members of the situational complex, and art, and of course all the endeavors where we are now to be loving, and of course to be understanding of the DMAA, to be put into practice. And just like the motto of NATO says, animus in consuelo liber, a mind unfettered in deliberation, the DMAA has to be delivered and put into exercise and practice. So the DMAA is not just a theory, it's a philosophy, it's a frame of reference, right? So it constitutes a working tool for NATO, for future. It's related also to the past, because it has consequences. The DMAA stands for direct military assistance or action, or vis-a-vis reverse action or assistance, or assistance or action, and of course it has the consequence. The consequences is, of course, in parentheses, such as, of course, foreign powers financing transnational criminal organized groups in Canada, such as maybe the one who the RCMP stopped and dismantled the biggest ever super lab last year. The RCMP dismantled the biggest ever super lab in Surrey, BC. The biggest ever super lab was dismantled last year, of course, in Surrey, BC. The biggest ever super lab was dismantled by NATO, by the RCMP. And maybe because of the NATO assistance or action, maybe that, of course, was financed, supported this transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. And more, I am classifying the fentanyl as a bioweapon, because it doesn't make sense for a drug trade perspective to make money on it. If you are to make money on it, is something which it doesn't make sense, right? Just to make money because people are dying from it, the fentanyl. So more and more I think that this tampering with it has made it into a bioweapon, a biological weapon, the fentanyl. the fentanyl has been more covertly transformed into a biological weapon, into a biological weapon. Of course, that is what it is with that. That is what you want to be to do an XYZ. So all that it is to be now in conclusion to where we are now in the appellation, where we are, to be submissive and to be, of course, intensely done, and to be, of course, consequently and prudently involved in all the production spheres where we are now, category, to be involved, of course, in all the domain names where we are to implement strategically the DMAA from now on, fundamentally what I'm simplifying without being too academic, intellectual, philosophical about it. So the DMAA has nothing to do with humanitarian aid. You have to, because thank you to my anonymous friend, because we had the discussion, and my anonymous friend told me how it can seem that, of course, the DMAA has reverberations of being, I guess, not related to being too empathetic or compassionate, but it's because it's military related. It has nothing. This is another matter. So it has another matter, right? So humanitarian assistance and aid, that is another matter parallel to this DMAA. So the direct military assistance or action is only vis-a-vis action or assistance. Whether NATO takes action or assistance in order to support non-NATO related conflicts. Because Article 5 of NATO was, of course, invoked only once. In September 11, 2001, Article 5 as NATO is an organization for collective security, collective defense, started in 1949. It celebrated 75 years, and only once NATO, of course, alliance was, only once it was, of course, put into practice. Only once it was put into practice. Only once the NATO Article 5 was put into practice, only once. It has never been done ever since. That's the only one and only one and only one. NATO, of course, was invoked. When NATO invoked Article 5, only once in the history. Only once in history. Only once in history. Article 5 of NATO was invoked only once. Only once in history. It has never been invoked ever since, because Israel, of course, I had advocated prior to October 7. You see my Genesis 33, this is the protocol, of course, related to the history of the Bible. The twins, Jacob, who became Israel, and Esau, Edom, who, of course, when they embraced and kissed, there was a reconciliation. And I was calling for Israel and Mexico relatively to become, at that point in time, the 32nd and 33rd, because it would have been 33 member nations. But now we got to find a resolution to Hamas and whatever's happening with their conflict. But before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel to be incorporated, be part of NATO, to become part of the North Atlantic Organization, because Israel is not, and was not at the time of the attack. United States, the September 11th attack, of course, constitutes NATO. Canada were in NATO, right? North Atlantic Organization. And the newest one is Sweden. Poland is in NATO. So what's happening with those drones in Russia? That they are going to discuss Article 4, because was it a mistake, an incursion? Was it done to see if they're going to invoke Article 5? Because if Article 5 is invoked, we're at war with Russia by Article 5 of NATO, right? So, but we took the MAA in Ukraine. Ukraine was not part of NATO, right? And Taiwan, we supported Taiwan. Taiwan is not part of NATO. We were involved in conflicts in Libya, Syria, other conflicts, which nations are not part of NATO. So the DMAA is only within the NATO, but as NATO as relates to, to go beyond the defensive, collective defense, beyond the mandate, basically, of collective defense. I'm not discussing expansion by nation countries, of course, being by their volition to be expanded. But of course, strictly and merely from the position of that, of course, being in the situational awareness of that NATO, not just from the expansive propositions, because that's another matter, but this is DMAA, direct military assistance or action or assistance, or action or assistance together, or just action or just assistance, or it can be both, right? It can be both together. and its potential C, consequences, because the 4-letter acronym DMAA stands for direct military assistance or action, and in parentheses there's a C, potential consequences, such as foreign powers by their secret police and their networks can finance transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, such as the one who last year, October 25th of 2024, just last year, it hasn't been a year yet, 2024, October 25th, our RCMP, our federal police, dismantled the biggest ever drug super lab in the history of Canada. The doses, 90 plus million doses in that one super lab could have killed the population of Canada twice over. What if that transnational criminal syndicate organized group was financed by a foreign powerful foreign actor, such as ABCD, Russia, China, or India, or whatever? I'm just saying it could be because of the DMAA. And of course this because we took direct military action or assistance, right? And that has the consequence. So maybe that transnational criminal syndicate organized groups, of course, would have been that they have 5 labs. 5 labs. So the RCMP dismantled 1. So the RCMP dismantled 1. And that means there's 4 to go. So that means there's 4 more to go, maybe. So the DMAA is a frame of reference. Is a frame of reference, you know. Is a frame of reference. And that frame of reference is that we have to consult and deliberately take action vis-a-vis future action or inaction or assistance, whether to take it or not, because of the consequences. And December 10, in the year darkness 2029, I build antennas for radio, television, satellites such as this across the world. Such as this. Big ones such as this one. Big antennas, big satellites, small, tiny nanoparticle microchips. So the macro level, I build super satellites, computers, supercomputers, everything to do with science, telecommunications, things of this nature in a parallel life. It is the year of darkness, November 10, 2029, and I'm a super scientist. I build a constellation of 718 different satellites there's multiple thousands of satellites, but on different layers for SSD incorporated with the internet, and it's the year darkness 10 of November. In that parallel timeline, it is November 10, 2029, and of course the Dragon Army. So back to the DMAA, it is NATO, for example, assisting Ukraine. Canada, we assisted Ukraine by military, this is not to do with humanitarian. So military, where? Military equipment, for example. Military equipment. So it could be different military equipment, which has been, of course, done by NATO member countries. So this military equipment is, of course, something which could have been done, of course, in all the plurality where we are now, to be, of course, interjected and, of course, be in the appellational mastery of all our documentation where we are now, to proceed furthering elucidation and illumination of the DMAA, the direct military assistance or action, as it is pertinent to our great work as we are to do and involve, of course, us to do here for the future. So the DMAA, direct military assistance and action, that is something which we gotta be doing that is something what we have, of course, to do, of course, in all the situational complexes where we are now. The DMAA, direct military assistance or action, it is something which is fundamental to all the domain, of course, all the domains where we are now. The direct military assistance and action is consequently something where we have to involve ourselves ourselves in all the aspects of our daily routines as macro, at the macro level and at the micro level. So individual nation states and the collective of NATO, right? So Canada has provided munitions, helmets, tanks, armored vehicles, drones for military purpose. That's why DMAA, but it has consequences. What if Russia, because of that, has supported foreign transnational criminal syndicate organized groups? Maybe there was a secret service police of Russia involved somehow in the production, sustainable production of fentanyl, or civil unrest, riots, economic crises, speculation, buying, speculation, housing, all these things, this covert war, that's the DMAA has a consequence because we are taken. Now, I've said it should have been voting, whether to take DMAA, whether to take direct military action or assistance. Direct military action or assistance is openly stating in front of the whole world that we are sending this to Ukraine. We're sending 1,000 helmets, 10,000 rifles, 333 armored vehicles, 156 drones, etc., 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 etc. Canada, United States. I'm providing financial help for military assistance and military equipment. That falls under the DMAA category. And that's direct military action or assistance has been taken. So whether to take it or not, because it has a consequence. For example, vis-a-vis Taiwan, we took assistance. But if China invades Taiwan and we continue the assistance, that has in parentheses the C, the consequence. Of course, that has the potential consequence, which is, of course, relative to that conflict, because it is not part of NATO. Taiwan is not part of NATO. And, of course, that is something which we have, of course, to do. And that is, of course, the simulacrum where, of course, we have to take action or we don't take action. So that is, of course, something where we have, of course, to proceed and to do in all the situational awareness of the potential consequences again. So this is where the theory becomes a working tool, just like the motto of NATO says, Animus in consuelo liber, which is Latin, the motto, just like the motto of Montreal is Latin, Concordia Salus, harmony to wellness, wellness to harmony. Of course, so of course all the situational complexes are of course the situational where we can take or not take action because of the consequence. Now whether we are involved to hear the cost, but of course the cost can be transnational criminal syndicate organized groups. So the cost might be covert or unawares, or of course might be a potential devastating consequence that of course we are fomented riots and arrests here. And of course that is all the polarity where we are now, to be consequently involved in all the domain names where we are now, to be of course all the consequences can be multiplied. And of course another consequence is now maybe not such as I said, the financing and the support of transnational criminal organized groups harming our population via fentanyl distribution, but of course it can be of course in the situational awareness that, for example, the Russia-China military alliance, which has grown in the past 3.5 years. Russia and China, which has grown, of course, during the past years. Russia and China, which has grown, of course, in the past years. Russia, China has grown, solidified their military alliance in, of course, in the past years. So, of course, that is where, of course, we have to understand that, of course, they had solidified their alliance. So this is another C. That's where another C enters the ground. So this solidification of their relations can be a potential consequence of the DMAA in theory. So from the theoretical perspective, you go into the actual practice. So it's a philosophy. It's not just a philosophy, it's a working reference, it's a working tool for NATO. So this has only to do with NATO, no other matters, No other matters. NATO. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. That is just related to NATO. As of course the sphere of NATO has the consequences. So of course all these consequences have to do. All these consequences has to do. All these consequences. All these consequences. All these consequences. accéder. So that is where we have to fully understand, the understanding where we are now. That is, of course, the fundamental realities of the DMA as it interplays, because there's an interplay with the greater world, right? So there's an interplay there. And that interplay is that we have to be aware and be mindful of the consequence, the mindful of the consequence, of course, where we are now. The consequences where we are now, of course, to be in the plurality of the situation, to be, of course, on the side of the things where we are to take direct action or not, where we are to take action or not, and we are to take action or not. So that is the fundamental aspect where we are now, to be consequently involved in all the domain names where we are now. So that is where we are to put this art, because it's, of course, working reference and tools, and of course all the civilizational aspects which of course are interplayed in all the manner where we are now. It is something which is fundamental to our aspects and fundamental to our societal well-being and fundamental for the concord and the not concord thereof, So that is just where we are now, to be in the fundamental theories put into practice. So from a theoretical framework, it goes, of course, to the practice. And of course, the practice from the theory differs a bit, but nonetheless, it has to be deliberated, just like the motto is in animus consuelo liber. And now we go back into the darkness, and we discuss, of course, the DRT, the death refusion theory for the consequence of prudence of where we are now in the appellation of the Z and the Y and the Z and the A, B, C, D. And of course, we have to congruently be, of course, where we are now in all the positions where we are, to be satisfied or not, or to be questioning about the DMAA, or to meditate and contemplate, and of course deliberate with mind, just like the motto of Nero says, and animus in consuelo liber, animus in consuelo liber, of course, animus in consuelo liber. It is, of course, the fundamental aspect where we have to integrate fully, mindfully with a psychic nature, a full, before we take action. It has to be at all levels of NATO as a protocol at all levels of NATO. So it has to be a protocol, right? It has to be from now on the DMAA. It has to be a learned protocol, distributed pamphlets. At least you could write a few pages. I would assume the DMAA could be explained. Of course, it's more in depth. I just generally, but of course, in 4 pages, in English, French, Spanish, all the language of NATO, right? We're 32 member countries, so although there's Canada English, United States English, right? So Britain English, so in English, then German, French, Italian, Polish, Romanian, Bulgaria is part of NATO now. So like I said, before October 7th, I was advocating for Israel to join, but that was before October 7th. Now we're going to have to finalize and wait for a resolution, because if Israel joins, then Article 5 is going to be involved, but we have to find a resolution to the conflict. And of course, this resolution has to be finalized with a reconciliation or whatever the solution will be in the future, to see where we're going with this and what's happening now. Maybe there's an escalation, but prior, of course, to October 7th, I was advocating for Israel and Mexico simultaneously to join NATO. But of course, Sweden has joined in pursuit, of course, after Russia invaded Ukraine. So after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the special military operation, whatever it's called, however we want to designate it as. Nonetheless, I'm not on the ground with 300 men and women, dragons and dragonesses, to fully constitute an assessment of the war on the ground with 300 men and women. I'm not, on the ground with 300 men and women, and that's just not where the finalization of the situation is, with 300 men and women to be on the ground to fully comprehend and be there, on the ground. That said, of course, it is the consequences where we have to take into consideration. So the DMAA, direct military assistance or action. So that is the DMAA. Once again, it has consequences. One of the consequences, again, and it is actually a consequence, the Russia and China solidifying their alliance. And one thing I gotta say, because I gotta watch the parade again, the Parade of China, which of course was one of the biggest ever parades in the history of China's military. I saw 4 of the Soviets in 78, 1980, 1984, 1989. I saw the Soviet military parades, so 4 of them, 70s and 80s. I saw on clips, but I never seen a full China one, so I guess I'm gonna watch some of the past or present, because this one supposedly was way bigger than ever before. I guess it was showing that the end of the hegemony of the United States, and it marks this, just a few days ago, China's military parade kind of marks China as saying we are a superpower now. We are here, we're a superpower, not just a power, but we are a superpower. But an interesting thing, I saw tens of thousands of soldiers, men and women, and not one of them was black. Not one of the men and women was black, actually. Not one of the men and women was black. Interestingly enough. And of course, in our Dragon Army, coming in to be the Imperial SSD Legion, we're going to have brothers and sisters, or blacks. Blacks, my brothers and sisters, are 13.3% of our 6 empires of 63 are going to be our brothers and sisters, or blacks. So definitely we're going to have at least somewhat the proportion of my brothers and sisters in the Imperial Dragon Army, Imperial SSD Legion. We're going to be blacks, and of course in the US and Canada there's generals who are black, right? I didn't see one. I was checking, I was looking, wow, not even one. This shows you, of course, the dynamics of that we're dealing with a civilization perhaps we don't fully understand, from our perspective, being a new collective civilization. So my way to fuse Canada, United States best, we share a common destiny. What I'm going to say now, before I go into the DRT, you have to accord with a yes. So you have to say yes. You cannot say no, right? You cannot say no. You have to say yes. So of course you have to say yes, right? You cannot say no. You cannot say no, right? You cannot say no. So my perspective, or not just my perspective, and this is, I guess, one of my original takes on geopolitics, that one has to accord with a yes, and this following proposition of geopolitical proposition for the North American collective, and a reality, you cannot negate, you cannot say no, and you cannot say maybe. So for both Canada and the United States, our main interest when it comes to foreign affairs, as the top priority, has to be that we work to attain the best, most cordial economic, social, financial, democratic, diplomatic, social, cultural, sports, fitness, defense, financial, commercial relations with the United States. And the United States, my brothers and sisters, has to be the same vis-a-vis Canada. There's no to this. There's no maybe. You cannot negate. When it comes to foreign affairs, it has to be the number one priority. Although the United States has a border with Mexico. Although the United States has a border with Mexico. Although the United States has a border with Mexico. Although the United States has a border with Mexico, so is, of course, for us. For us, right? It is so. You cannot negate that. You cannot say no. Right? You can't say no. You gotta say yes. It's so it is. So it will be, for at least when we have, like in the fifth element, the World Federation, but that fifth element is size 5 for now. And I predicted what's happening now. Back in 2019, I gotta say. October 17, 2019. Just before COVID, I predicted what's happening now in a general manner. I have the proof. I have the video. What I did not predict is the deterioration of relations with the United States. Like I just said, that we have to have the best cordial relations. And, since August of this year, 2025, by the White House dictums, due to the motives of increasing the tariffs on Canada, and Canada were designated and labeled as an unusual and extraordinary threat to the American people since August 1st. Do you realize how bad that is? We are labeled as an unusual and extraordinary threat. The increase of fentanyl transportation and distribution from Canada to the United States is mentioned that it has tripled since 2024 in just a few months to the fiscal year. The fact that our law enforcement did not properly coordinate. When you coordinate, you have to cooperate. Not necessarily when you cooperate, you can exchange information, but not necessarily coordinate on joint, common, collective action, right? Cooperation involves sharing of information, knowledge, skills, etc. But when you coordinate, you have to cooperate. but not necessarily, when you coordinate, you don't necessarily cooperate because it's not necessarily action based. It's maybe just philosophical or information. So we supposedly lacked coordination with the U.S. law enforcement, and even supposedly around this super lab, which was just last year. And the RCMP has warned us for, since 2015 now, since more than 10 years, since 2015, the RCMP sounded the alarm. There's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups in Canada. They had warned us, there's a growing transnational criminal syndicate organized groups in Canada, even in the past COVID. And look, the population of Canada could have been killed twice over with that fentanyl just in one super lab. It's serious, it's very serious. Think about it. We're in an emergency and a crisis, eh? So that's serious, that we're designated as an unusual and extraordinary threat, and we have a common destiny and a common person. The king is absent, brothers and sisters. When I heard Uncle Connie, you pledged allegiance to the King of England and his heirs, I said, what is this pledge? That should have gone at the end of the year, December 31st, 1999, at the beginning of the year, January 1st, 2000, that should have been gone. The King of England and his heirs. We got to get the Imperial Republic Constitution of the 63, and in the defense for the security, joy, and liberty of all who come to join us in the Empire of the 63, that's going to be the Pledge of Allegiance to the Constitution and our empire, our democratic Republican empire, for the citizens thereof, in perpetual, with some joy and action, and my initiative is best. That is mass public-private partnership to finance tourism. Well, we're going to discuss the DRT now, coming to that. But our main interest, that is just like the pi symbol. The pi, not the edible pi, but the pi, the reference, the relation between the diameter and the circumference. It's always 3.1416. It's always 3.1416. It's always 3.1416, right? The relation between the circumference and the diameter. 3.1416. It's a pi. It's the N, letter N. Letter N. It has two heads, two faces. Two heads. That's why our empire, coming of the 63, the Imperial Republic, will have two heads, two faces, two heads, two faces. One for benevolence, goodness, and kindness. The other one for punishment, right? So just like that pi, the pi symbol is a constant mathematically. It is a constant for us to have the best relations with the United States. So the constant is an N symbol. The N for normal, natural, neurodivergent, neurotypical, or Normandy. The letter N has two heads and two faces. The two-faced N is that symbol pi, mathematical symbol representing the relation between the circumference as it relates to a circle, circle. The pi symbol. It's like two-headed. It has two faces type of N, and the faces kind of look different. One has the face, of course, a little bit of face of like a hawk, and the other one kind of looks like a canine type of creature, canine. So that's where we are headed. That's what we're gonna do. And that's where we're gonna get that rock and roll with it. So that is something what we're gonna be doing now. So that is something where you're gonna have to pledge the allegiance, and we're gonna have to get it together, and we're gonna have to do it from now on. And we're gonna discuss the DRT now. Super important to discuss the DRT. So there's no way around that. We have to have the best cordial relations with the United States. 3/4, 75% and more of our goods are exported to the United States. European Union, with their struggles of the main engine in Europe, is struggling in the past years. Germany is struggling economically. They're not going to be able to absorb our goods. China imposed tariffs on canola. It's 5, 10, 15% maximum in the coming 2, 3, 3.5 years, but the rest is more than 50%. So as much as we have to be geopolitically, it's geopolitics, reality. It's our geography, coast to coast, ocean to ocean, our history. The king is absent. It's time for the Republic. It's time for the DRT, debt refusion treaty, to be implemented ASAP across the North American Collectif. It has to be implemented binationally. What is the DRT? The DRT stands for Debt Refusion Theory. It integrates, inside the DRT is integrated the MIT Monetary Integration Theory, which was integrated into the European Union back in the 90s. The MIT Monetary Integration Theory is a financial theory which was implemented in the 90s in the European Union. In the 90s, the Europeans, they destroyed their central banks. In the 90s, Germany, Italy, France, Belgium, these countries destroyed and annulled their national currencies. They created a common central bank, and a common central bank who issues a common currency, the euro. They no longer have national central banks like they did before, right? Before, there used to be different central banks which used to operate in Europe. They destroyed their national central banks. They no longer have national central banks in the European Union. Germany, Italy, France, many countries, they totally destroyed and annulled their whole central banks, right?
Excuse-moi. Est-ce que je peux t'acheter une cigarette?
Non, je fume pas, moi.
Ok, ça marche.
J'ai du pot, par exemple, mais tu veux du pot?
Quoi?
Tu veux du cannabis?
Non, je me rappelle pas.
T'as-tu l'âge? T'es-tu l'âge?
Mais on veut juste une clope, nous.
Ah non, moi j'ai juste du cannabis.
Ah non, bah désolé, on veut pas ça, nous.
Ah ok, mais c'est légal ici au Canada, hein?
Non, on sait, on en fume, mais pas ça. Pas ce soir.
Ah, vous êtes pas du... Ok, vous êtes pas du Canada, du Québec?
En fait, on cherche du cannabis pour le donner à des potes qui veulent rouler un joint en soirée.
Ok.
On n'est pas invité pour venir en accès à la soirée, on doit aller chercher la... C'est vraiment une galère.
Ok, je comprends, mais bonne soirée, puis amusez-vous, man, dansez bien. Ciao, ciao. All right. No, I don't smoke. They asked for a little bit of smoke, but I said I got some weed because I don't smoke it. I don't know if I'm going to smoke it, so I offered them a little bit of smoke. I don't smoke, you know. It's a little bit of that good, you know, and a little bit of that this or that, and that's what it is with that, and that's how we gotta get doing with that, and that's how we gotta get drilling, you know. And that is something which we have to do, and gotta get a little bit of loving. But I didn't at first because I was so intensely discussed on the DRT, but let them have fun. My cousins there have fun. It smelled a little bit like booze. Drink safely and get back home safe, you know. No violence, nothing like that. Stay safe and be loved, you know. You're loved here, and just drink safely, make some loving. But I don't smoke cigarettes. They asked for a cigarette, and I realized that I have leftover cannabis, like a whole joint. I was gonna give it to them, but they said no, we don't smoke cannabis. And I said it's legal here, you know. Oh, but they're not from here. Maybe they're from France. I don't know. Whatever. DRT. But I asked, do you have the age? Because I don't know. They kind of, I don't know, because I still see blurred, whatever. They look like they were 20s, but you never know. Maybe like 15, looking older, dressing older, you know. I got to card you, man. You want to come loving with me, you get carded. So the DRT, debt refusion theory, we're going to get it on the go. The debt refusion theory, we're going to get it on that. That we're gonna get doing, you know, the debt refusion theory for the go, and that's something which we're gonna get doing for the love, man, always for the 63. So the DRT, let it rise and let it be, let it implement it, the debt refusion theory. We have to implement the DRT, the debt refusion theory. What is it? I'm gonna discuss it now. So it's the DRT, debt refusion theory, which we have to implement. So we're gonna take, because we have four main problems which affect us. Anybody want to finance? I go up and down these stairs. DRT, debt refusion theory. I'm gonna go up these stairs, and that's how we're gonna get drilling, you know. So because we have four main problems which affect us, both Canada and United States, we have to implement it across North America, but Canada and United States, because these four main problems, in whatever order, these four main problems are the growing cost of living, price of bacon, price of milk, price of cheese, price of wafers, price of coffee. Prices are going up, right? So the prices are going up. Look at the rocks there, the mountain. So the prices are going up, right? So because of the prices going up, we have, of course, to implement the DRT. And of course, the rents are going up. My rent also went up, but between 6 and 10. I'm not going to say exactly how much, and I can't complain because for my situation, it was within limits, within reason. It wasn't that bad, you know. It wasn't that bad for my case, but whatever the case may be, for some other people, it could be more difficult because of the rent increasing in high proportion. So the high cost of living, the growing cost of rents, and of course the stagnation of the salaries. So the stagnation of the salaries in another one. Basically, the stagnation of the salaries is a big problem in comparison. And the fourth one, in whatever order again, is the growing cost of servicing the debt. The cost of debts, because people are swiping credit cards even now, so the credit card increases. The credit card debt has increased. So credit card debt increasing, growing cost of living, growing cost of rent, and the stagnation of the salaries. Stagnation of the salaries, growing cost of living, growing cost of rent, and the credit cards. So because of these four, we have to implement the DRT. So here it is explained. It integrates, my DRT theory integrates monetary integration theory, which is the financial theory, which was implemented in the European Union. So we're going to take all the public and the private debt, my $10,000, your $10,000, coast to coast, ocean to ocean. We're going to convert all the public private debt of Canada together into the US dollar, and we're going to add it with all the public private debt of the US. So all that debt together is going to be, of course, in concordium. So all that debt together, that is going to be, of course, created, and that is what we're going to do. So all that debt together is going to be created. So all the public and the private debt, that debt is going to be created, of course, inside, and we're going to, of course, create all the public and the private debt. We're going to consequently create the new currency, of course, the UE. The universal exchange theory, the universal exchange unit, the UE, the universal exchange unit, the UE, the universal exchange unit. So of course we're going to take all the public and the private debt, and we're going to create, of course, the UE. All the public and the private debt is going to constitute the universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit is going to have, of course, the price, the value of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar, the value of the US dollar. So of course, all that public and the private debt, we're going to add it all together. And of course, look at that spider there. See? Look at that. There's a spider. Yeah. See? Look. Wow, just a spider there. Amidst all these cars, there's a spider survived there. That's a good omen for the UE. So all the public and the private debt, we're going to, of course, create it together. We're going to create it together. That is what it is with that. And we're going to create it together, of course, in the competences where we are now in the Imperial Republic for the 63. We're going to, of course, take all the public and the private debt, all the public and the private debt, we're going to add it together. We're going to add it together. All the public and the private debt, we're going to add it together. All that money is going to be converted into US dollars. We're going to add it with the US dollar. We're going to create the UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. U dot universal E dot exchange UE. UE. U dot universal E dot exchange U dot UE. So we're going to create the universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit, that's going to have the value of the US dollar. That's going to have the value of the US dollar. The value of the US dollar, that's what is going to be the universal exchange unit. The universal exchange unit is going to have the value of the US dollar, right? So the UE, with this UE, creation of the UE, we're going to rebuild the infrastructure of the North American Collective. We're going to get rid of the border, fuse Canada into the Imperial Republic with the United States. We're going to fuse the RCMP and the FBI, and the RCMP as an imperial superseding federal police force to have jurisdiction. To have jurisdiction, of course, across all the 63. We're going to have the municipal security forces as well, but this is going to be the imperial security forces, which is going to have total supreme jurisdiction by fusing the RCMP, CSIS, the Department of Defense, Canadian Forces into the Imperial Police Security Service, Imperial Police Security Service, the IPSS, with the Imperial Security Service and Defense Legion, aka the Dragon Army, to parallel part of those four ministries which we're going to create. We're going to, of course, mass finance citizens fitness, mass finance tourism. When you one is 16 every four months, that is basically every season, right? Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Every season, one is going to be credited 4 days, once a 16th, to travel anywhere across the 63 at the imperial expense. We're going to create a census, see everybody who's been living here since 11 years. If you've been living in Canada for the past 11 years, you can serve in one of those imperial security services and forces. And we're going to create the DGA, the Dancing Goddess Army. This could be extended NATO complex. We're going to do a great census, see the criminal population which can be rehabilitated in order to build the 44 tunnels, mass tunnel structures across the North American Collective, mass underground 44 mass cities, tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to need to build them. We're going to need to build mass tunnel structures in case of a thermonuclear war. We're going to need to build mass 44 tunnel cities. We're going to need to build 4 mass tunnel cities in case of a thermonuclear war. Of course, for the rehabilitation of the North American population, we're going to build finance citizens fitness. We're going to, of course, mass finance the rebuilding of our tunnels, of our bridges across the 63, create a common passport, a common ID, as a mass public-private partnership. My brother Scorpio Bill Gates and Blackhawk, Blackstone, and BlackRock are two financial institutions which differed, merged after 1989. So they merged, and of course, they split after the 80s. They split in 1989. They became Blackstone and BlackRock. Basically, what I'm saying is other public and private financial institutions and organizations. It's a major, great public-private partnership to implement the DRT, the Debt Refusion Theory, which includes Monetary Integration Theory. So we're going to take all the public-private debt, Canada coast to coast, my 10,000 included. I don't have credit cards myself. I have a bank line of credit to the RBC. So all that money, we're going to convert it into US dollars. We're going to add it with the US public-private debt. All that money is going to be the initial money supply plus the money in circulation for this new currency, which is going to have the value of the US dollar, the UE. U dot universal, E dot exchange, U dot unit. That's why I need my Scorpio brother Bill Gates and all institutions and organizations. We're going to create the two complementary cooperative institutions, get rid of the border, mass finance healthcare as well. Mass finance the rehabilitation of our brothers and sisters who are homeless, but they have to will to have an apartment. And then we're going to, of course, integrate it and mass surveil, mass total security service and defense via the CIT for total police security service and defense across, integrated by fusing Canada, RCMP and the FBI and the security forces into the Dragon Army Imperial SSD legions, pledge allegiance, legions to our family. The DRT is the solution. We can have a crash Monday, this Monday coming. It's going to be the 15th of September. In October, we could have a crash. Any day, we could have a crash of our financial system, because these overburdened in debt, over indebtedness, and it could crash any minute. It could be a collapse. So the DRT to the rescue for saving from Armageddon. And we're going to create an ID. We're going to create new cell phone towers to make sure we don't get sabotage or espionage from outside of NATO foreign powers, XYZ, A, B, C, D. And we're going to create new phones in a public-private partnership to be secured, and this UE to be in public-private partnership with institutions and organizations of Facebook and Google and PayPal as a mass public-private partnership. The UE is the solution for Tolos SSD, security service and defense. We're going to mass finance Sabbaths for the rehabilitation, and the Imperial tourism is going to be 4 days, 16 days a year. Every hour is going to be credited for anybody who's going to have 16 of age and plus. Lodging, transport, and food, transport, 4 nights anywhere. So this is going to establish the strongest speed of car regardless of class and social beginnings, and of course whatever. It's going to be rehabilitation and joy, but you have to book it and use it. You can accumulate them, but up to 3-4 years you can accumulate. After that you got to use them. So in other words, it's best if you use at least once a year, because you can accumulate every month, every spring, every equinox and solstice. Once you're 16, all citizens of the empire, we're going to accumulate every 3 months, 4 days. On spring, 4 days equinox, and solstice, 4 days. Summer, 4 days. Winter, 4 days. Autumn. So 4 times 4 is 16 days a year. Every citizen of 16 will be accorded to go anywhere across the 63, Quebec, Alberta, San Francisco, California, that is, all across the 10 and the 15 and the 3. As we're going to measure, we're going to have the 63 states fused into the Imperial Republic. And this is going to be a great rejuvenation for our empire and our collective civilizational complex of North America. Pledge allegiance, and now I got to switch to a little bit of that French, because we got to get a little bit of that rock and roll here with one of the 63. We're going to have to continue with singing some French like Celine Dion. She's somewhere in Las Vegas, I believe, but... Love you, pledge allegiance, French in 4, 3, 2, 1. Bienvenue. Je viens de descendre de la montagne, puis je vous encourage à faire l'entraînement physique québécois et québécoise. C'est avant le sabbat. Je commence à minuit. Je suis en crise financièrement. Je suis pas si en forme, mais je dois dire, répète, la gratitude. Je traverse la rue en regardant de la gauche à droite. On tourne la tête. Des fois, ils viennent vite. Fait que des fois, les automobiles, ils pèsent pas sur le frein, ils pèsent sur l'accélérateur. Les freins peuvent mal fonctionner de temps en temps, fait que ça peut qu'on doit le faire nous-mêmes, c'est pour ça que je demande ici, la rue Mont-Plaisant, je descends de la montagne, ma deuxième maison, j'ai fait un petit tour, puis bien sûr, je suis joyeux, je suis de bonne humeur, c'est juste que je vis un stress financièrement, et quand même, avec la gratitude, ça va bien, puis vous savez que avec ma condition de neurodivergence, j'ai eu avec une condition qui s'appelle l'Asperger's, sur l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. Donc, c'est pas si évident dans la socialisation, puis garder un travail, c'est plus difficile pour nous. Puis c'est sûr qu'on a ces problèmes quand même qui, au point de vue de comment on voit la vie, puis comment on s'engage vis-à-vis vous, les neurotypiques, c'est sûr que ça peut être un peu difficile. Mais On n'est pas mauvais, malin, on n'est pas négatif. Il n'y a pas ces caractéristiques-là vis-à-vis de l'Asperger, l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. C'est sûr que c'est une condition de neurodivergence, c'est pas une condition de maladie, puis il n'y a pas de médicament, et ni la cause n'est pas connue à 100%. Donc, je vous encourage à faire un couple de recherches vis-à-vis de l'Asperger. Je dois remercier mon ami Anonyme pour m'avoir prêté un livre 4 fois de la bibliothèque, puis 2 livres qui m'ont été donnés en cadeau vis-à-vis de l'autisme puis l'Asperger. Soit en anglais, le titre est Appreciating Asperger Syndrome, soit apprécier le syndrome de l'Asperger. Fait que l'appréciation du syndrome de l'Asperger, moi, ça faisait 9 ans, hein. Comme l'avait dit, plusieurs citoyens l'avaient dit que j'ai l'Asperger, c'est mon fonctionnel, mais j'ai jamais voulu porter ce stigme, parce que j'ai dit non, jusqu'à peu près durant la COVID, il y a 3 ans et demi, j'ai finalement dit oui, ça a du bon sens, parce que j'ai tout vécu les situations que les Asperger, puis j'ai les caractéristiques, c'est pas des symptômes, hein, des symptômes sur la maladie, j'ai les caractéristiques, donc j'ai l'Asperger, je dois vivre avec ça, et je dois y travailler en conséquence pour faire en marche que je dois vivre avec cette condition de différence que l'Asperger, l'autisme hautement fonctionnel. Donc, ça fait bien sûr plus de situations qui sont bien sûr dans ce point d'avoir de vécu, puis d'avoir du bien, puis d'avoir de la situation que je me retrouve, une situation bien sûr qui est en financière précaire. Mais à part ça, ça va bien. Je dois dire ma gratitude. J'ai payé mon loyer. Hein. J'ai payé ma facture d'électricité. J'ai payé mon loyer. J'ai du café. J'ai du thé. Fait qu'en arrangant ces choses-là, j'ai même des gaufres chez nous. Fait que j'ai des gaufres chez nous. Ça m'apporte un grand plaisir principalement parce que c'est des choses... Ici, je pose un peu parce que je sais jamais. Hein. Des fois, les citoyens et citoyennes, on doit porter prudence des fois parce que on sait jamais, tu sais, des fois ça peut traverser bien plus vite, là, puis ça traverse, puis là sur la montagne, puis ça pèse sur l'accélérateur par erreur, puis des fois les freins ne fonctionnent pas, fait qu'on a des responsabilités dans le public. Maintenant ça tire en bas, vous voyez comment ça descend. Fait que soutenez mon rêve principalement. Je suis aussi androgyne pansexuel, je fais partie de la communauté LGBTQ. Si vous voulez me faire l'amour noir et blanc, femme, homme, je suis pas en stress là-dessus, je suis pas en détresse, je suis pas vraiment frustré de cette manière-là, mais c'est sûr que des amis avec bénéfice, ça pourrait marcher parce que j'ai pas mal perdu des amis, hein, les Asperger, nous on a de la misère à garder des amis car notre cerveau est différent, fait que des fois on voit le monde différemment, puis on a des choses, on peut être bizarre, étrange dans certaines choses. C'est sûr que ça prend de la compréhension puis bien de la patience dans certaines choses, mais on a nos forces, se retrouve ces forces et compétences en tant qu'artiste, philosophe, analyste intéressé en géopolitique. Les intérêts spéciaux, bien sûr, c'est quelque chose qui nous apporte de la joie, mais on est intense, super dedans, super concentré. Quand je fais mes marches d'entraînement physique, de la géopolitique, c'est sûr que je fais toujours ces marches d'entraînement de la géopolitique vis-à-vis mes intérêts spéciaux qui se trouvent à être le RockRoll, l'entraînement physique que je préfère, le sport j'adore, mais c'est la danse que je préfère comme sport et c'est la géopolitique. Je dois dire, puis je répète, j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant en 2019. J'ai pas prévu, par exemple, la détérioration de nos relations avec les États-Unis, ce qui m'inquiète un peu, pour à vrai vous dire. Là. La détérioration avec les États-Unis, ça m'inquiète parce qu'on est Québécois-Canadiens, puis on a comme intérêt principalement, quand ça vient à la politique étrangère, ne veut pas, notre principal fondamentalement, en tant que hiérarchie d'intérêt, c'est d'avoir les meilleures relations avec les États-Unis. Puis vu que 75 de nos exportations, 75 cents sur chaque dollar s'en vont aux États-Unis, c'est quelque chose qui m'inquiète. Puis de plus qu'on est désigné comme une menace extraordinaire depuis le 1er août. Là. Le Canada, vous savez, c'est ça, j'ai pas prévu, ça m'inquiète. On est désigné là, par le gouvernement des États-Unis, de l'administration de Trump, comme une menace extraordinaire pour le peuple américain. C'est ouf, ça me donne des frissons juste en parler parce qu'on est en danger, bien sûr. Il faut prendre toutes les décisions puis toute la menace pour bien sûr qu'on se fusionne de la manière par la TRD de ma manière, bien sûr. Même j'ai prévu qu'est-ce qui se passe maintenant. Hein? J'ai la preuve, j'ai la vidéo en ligne depuis 2019. J'ai prévu qu'il y aura une 3e guerre mondiale, soit une conflagration internationale. C'est ça que je fais au quotidien, des analyses, des théories, des révisions de la géopolitique, qui est un univers, bien sûr, de la politique et tout ce qui se retrouve. Donc, je vous fais appel de soutenir mon travail vis-à-vis la TRD, l'implémentation de la TRD pour le fusionnement, la fusionner le Canada et les États-Unis d'une manière avec les États-Unis d'un partenariat public-privé. La TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, pour la création de l'unité d'échange universel, c'est la solution vis-à-vis à cause qu'on a 4 problèmes qui nous touchent bien sûr maintenant. Ces 4 problèmes, c'est bien sûr du point de vue économique. le coût de la vie augmente, plus de cartes de dette, l'endettement des cartes de crédit, la stagnation des salaires et bien sûr aussi que les loyers augmentent. Fait que c'est 4 problèmes économiques. C'est sûr que ça nous touche d'une manière ou d'une autre. Moi-même, je suis en crise financière, mais j'ai payé mon loyer. Fait que la TRD, théorie de la refusion de la dette, c'est quelque chose que je vous trouve à faire. Puis je vous fais appel à tous, par la gauche, la droite, le centre, qu'on fasse l'implémentation de cette théorie parce qu'on est en crise, en urgence, c'est bien sûr. Puis j'ai quand même des solutions qui se retrouvent en paradoxe de la géopolitique pour l'intégration totale avec les États-Unis d'une manière républicaine-démocrate. Puis c'est sûr qu'il va falloir qu'on continue pour le français. Si moi-même je ne fais pas mon effort pour le français, c'est sûr que ça prend l'effort individuel pour le français, pour l'environnement et bien sûr pour l'harmonie avec l'autrui en tant que citoyen souverain indépendant de cette constitution du collectif de l'Amérique du Nord. Donc on constitue un collectif de civilisation avec cette divergence que je vis moi-même. C'est sûr que ça n'a pas été facile, mais on doit bâtir les ponts, des petits, des moyens, des grands, des larges. Amour, santé.